Have you ever lifted a piece of furniture and found the carpet underneath looks brand new, while the rest of it looks, well, not brand new? That's when you realize you need new carpeting. At the Home Depot, we have a wide selection of all the top brands. Best of all, we'll install it for you. And even better than best of all, we install it free. So all you need to do is choose from our hundreds of styles and colors. Start your installation today at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Minimum purchase of $4.99. Exclusions apply. U.S. only. See store for details.
Sometimes you need to take control to make a difference. That's why with FlexPath from Capella University, you're in control. Set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move at a pace that works for you. Discover a different way forward at capella.edu.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult Vault. I'm your speaker Casey, and as you might be able to hear, I am losing my voice. This is as a result of the incredible people that I had the chance to chat with all over the weekend at CrimeCon in London. If I got the chance to meet you there, thank you for making the weekend unforgettable. And for anyone else who couldn't make it but would like to check out the next event, I will be up in Scotland on September the 10th for a day of CrimeCon, amazing podcasters, huge names in the true crime community, and a whole host of amazing conversations at the bar. Come and join me by using the code CULT at the checkout for your very own 10% discount at crimecon.co.uk. Also, if you are listening to this episode on release, the 17th of June, there is going to be a live session tomorrow at 8:30pm GMT, which is 3:30pm Eastern Time on Zoom, with returning guests Spencer Schneider and Esther Friedman. For a link to this session, you can visit patreon.com/thecultvault and become a patron from as little as £1 a month, which will grant you access to ad-free content, discounts on merch and CrimeCon tickets, exclusive monthly deep dives, and so much more. And of course, you will also be helping the podcast continue on its journey by supporting me and the show. Now on to today's episode with my special guest Dee, who is a female veteran of the US Marine Corps. And despite some tenuous situations and difficulties with her health, Dee was able to sit down and chat with me about her experiences in life, the Marines, and more. I hope this episode can be an example of not only how someone may choose to join the Marines and what life inside this high-demand organisation looks like, but also the amazing things that the human body and mind can overcome. Here is Dee. So hello, Dee, and thank you so much for agreeing to come and chat with me today on the show about your experiences in the US Armed Forces serving in the Marine Corps. I am eager to gain the perspective of a female veteran, and I am thankful that you have agreed to come and be this person today. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Dee. I'm a Marine Corps veteran of 4 years from 2000 and 2004. I'm also a ovarian cancer survivor. I've been in remission since 2009, and I'm also an alcoholic of 9 years sobriety. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and I'm still here doing crazy things, even though I'm a pretty boring person.
Your story as well. You've been sending me tidbits through for the last few months, and it's so inspiring and incredible. And I'm really humbled that we get to bring this story to the listeners, because it's not only a story of somebody who has experienced quite an intense, high demand organization, but also these other things in life that you've been through and you are open to talking about, discussing as well. So I feel as though that there might be other layers that listeners might relate to, other than, just the discussion around the US Marines. So I do appreciate you being so open about those really personal things that we might discuss today. And a lot of the time when we discuss high demand groups on this show, people are often born into them. A lot of the high demand religious groups, people will be second generation individuals born into that movement. But of course, that isn't the case with yourself. So can you tell us a little bit about your life and your upbringing, which led you to joining the Marines?
Yeah, for sure. I actually grew up in a little city outside of Buffalo, New York. There's really not much to do there. But drugs, alcohol, and sex. It's really as a city that once I moved out of there in my later teens, I was actually a much happier person. Just man. But when I was 5, we moved out. Actually, let me backtrack a little bit. My father's an alcoholic, and because of him, we had a lot of shortcomings growing up. We didn't have a lot. We relied on, the Salvation Army or the Goodwill to kind of help us through the holidays. My mom was working 2 jobs to try to help, pay the bills because my father, would rather sit on a bar stool than sit at home. So neither here nor there, but that is a big part of will be recurring theme that'll be coming up throughout the story. But when I was 5, we moved to Huntington Beach, California, and to get a new start, get my I guess to get my dad away from the bars. I'm not quite sure. I would assume because that was my mom was always trying to chase him out of there, and you're your father, you're a husband, let's get home and take care of your kids, But we moved to California. We were there from 87 to 89. So they were only there about 3 years. And, I don't remember a lot, but the things I remember were pretty significant. I remember that my father used to be on a softball team, and he broke his nose. What happened was the guy hit a line drive. My dad went to field the ball. It hit like a rock or something, took a weird bounce and nailed him right in the nose, shattered his nose. And everybody would remind me that I was laughing. When they took him off the field, I was laughing. I was like, I don't remember that. And I don't know why I was laughing. And I'd be like, why are you laughing? I'm like, I have no idea. But I know one of the things that I do is when I'm nervous or in stressful situations, I do laugh a lot because it's better than crying. We were brought up in a very, don't cry. It's for sissies. Why are you crying? You're being a baby. I'll give you a reason to cry. Da 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 da. We weren't real emotional. We never really shared our feelings and all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's because of that, even at 5 or 6, whatever. So that was one of the things. Another was because at the time when we were in California, my dad was a over the road truck driver, so I didn't see him much. And so it was pretty much my mom and my sisters. And my mom was sick, kept going to hospital. They kept sending her home saying nothing was wrong. And she's like, something is wrong. And she was losing weight. And I never noticed it until we would talk about it later in life. And one day my mom was just not very responsive. She was just not in a good way. My sister, she's 2 years older. The one I'm closest with, at least, is 2 years older than me. And she wound up calling 911 and found out that something was wrong with her gallbladder. She almost died. They had to remove her gallbladder, and she dropped to 97 pounds, and it was awful. And just they dropped the ball, and then almost was almost responsible for her death. Thank goodness she lived. It was crazy. But that and my sister, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember her coming in with my mom because my mom was at a different part, maybe in the back of the house or by the garage, and somebody tried to abduct my sister. I remember.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just, hysterical, just, crying and screaming. My mom is just like, holy crap, and so there's just all kinds of stuff, you don't think about it until, or, you don't realize how serious it is until you get older, and you're just like, holy shit, I almost lost my sister. Just all of these things. And then, then there's, then the 89 earthquake in San Francisco happened. And even though we're in Southern California and San Francisco's way up north, we were getting a lot of aftershocks. So, you had all these things going on over this, this short amount of time. And I think the earthquake was really what broke the camel's back, and was like, you know what? My mom was like, I'd rather rather go home where I know blizzards. I know when a blizzard is coming than not know when an earthquake's coming. You know, I remember doing earthquake drills, and this one particular time we had an earthquake, and my dad was coming down the stairs, and my sister comes running down behind him, almost pushes him down the stairs, because one of the things you want to do is go in the doorway and kind of, you know, brace yourself, or go under a table, and, you know, to make sure that, you know, you don't get crushed, I guess. I don't know, just these random little earthquake drills that you have to do and whatnot. So it was pretty wild. I mean, I remember, you know, having a good time, like being a kid. You know, you do what kids do, and, you know, and I think one of the other things I totally forgot about, oh my gosh, I remember I wrote this story in 3rd grade, and I wound up getting into like some distinguished writer program because of it. So my friends and I were outside, and we see this guy like climbing on the front of the house, and we're like, dude, like, what is this guy doing? Like, he goes in through the window because he's, you know, checking the door, checking the window, and we're just like, I think he's breaking in. So we had our friend's mom call the police. We're trying to give a description. You know, we're like 5 years old, 6 years old, trying to give a description.
He's a man.
Like,
He's a big man.
And the cops get there. He's in the house, and right after the cop showed up, the resident pulls in, and I guess she was like, yeah, that's my boyfriend. And I'm thinking, obviously back then I wasn't thinking it, but now I'm thinking, like, clearly, like, something's off there. Like, why would your boyfriend break into your house? Like, should he have a key or something?
Yeah. Well, if that was me, I mean, I've done things where I can't even like go into the full explanation of how this happened, but I've locked my keys in the car with the engine running, and my spare keys for the car in the glove box. And then I've had to pay someone to come out and like basically force their way into my car so I could turn the engine off. So, you know, he's probably, you know, he could have just done something but at 5 years old, you're like, you know, just thinking that man's breaking into that house.
Right. And, you know, so then of course, you know, we're feeling kind of silly, but, you know, we thought we were doing the right thing. So when I wrote this story, I called it Danger, you know, and of course the end of it was, you know, I thought I was going to be a hero. So like, you know, it was kind of like my dreams were dashed, you know. I thought I was going to be here to save the day or something, and no, not so much. It was just us being, you know,
I like that though. That's like a nice little that's a happy memory. A lot of the things that you've spoken about up until that point are injury or trauma related, and it's nice to have perspective on those things from childhood, you know, especially if you've had a childhood that's very difficult, where you've really lived sort of, you know, hand to mouth, relied on the charity of others. It's difficult to have that type of upbringing. I think it's easy to let yourself be resentful of that, and often resentful of others who haven't experienced that and have had a much easier upbringing. Of course, children can't decide that for themselves. So it's nice that you're able to reflect on that and say, yeah, me and my friends, we had good times. And a lot of the stuff that you wrote in your earlier emails to me did include the fact that you had a happy childhood, and everything was relatively, as you felt, normal and happy up until the point where your parents finally decided to separate from each other.
Yeah, you know, we had to make the best of it. So when we came back to New York, you know, we moved a lot, and I don't know if it was just because, again, like, we were trying to keep my dad clean, or if it was we just couldn't afford it. So I bounced around a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends, you know, but I made the best of it. I loved playing with the neighbors, you know, playing sports. I was always a tomboy. My parents had 4 kids because they wanted a boy. And every time they went to the hospital to do their check, you know, we're talking the 70s and 80s, right? So like, technology isn't what it is now. And they kept saying we were all supposed to be boys. So I don't know how they figured that out, but whoops, surprise, we're all girls. Well, I became the son, right? Like I'm the son that they didn't have. And always, playing with Transformers and Ninja Turtles and watching He-Man and Voltron and all these things, and playing softball and football and hockey with the kids, in the neighborhood. And like I had a lot of fun, and as I got older, I got into music, listen to music and just kind of, find that place. And even with my grandfather, my mom's father, who passed away in 99, like that's always been one of the things that bothered me the most, is that I never got to tell him I was going into the military, because everything didn't transpire until 2000 in my senior year. So like, we would go to church every Sunday. He would take us to lunch. I used to spend a lot of time over there because he hated my father and my father hated him. It was very mutual because obviously of his drinking and all the shortcomings that we had. So my grandfather stepped in and tried to do the best for us, take us to the beach, take us to the park, have us stay over and stuff like that. So, I remember, he got me in the martial arts as a teenager. We used to go to like tournaments because he had a black belt in judo. So like, that type of discipline. And he was also in the army. He served in Korea, and he never talked about it. But like that really instilled into me, because even as a little girl, I loved watching wrestling. And I was a huge Sergeant Slaughter fan. Even though he scared me, like I loved it. And I was like, man, that is so cool. And like as a little girl, I always wanted to be all these different things. Like I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be in the army. I wanted to be a football player. And as I got older, it was a little bit more realistic. I wanted to be like a criminal psychologist or a criminal psychiatrist. And I want to be a coroner. And I think a lot of that just revolves around wanting to know about the mind and just knowing like how these pieces fit together. And as morbid as it sounds, as a coroner, it's kind of the same idea. It's just with a dead body. But like, it's just all these different things, and wanting to go to college. And I totally just veered off. I don't even know where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's just like it, man, just coming back, was so different though. Just we lived in a haunted house. If assuming people believe in that stuff. I do. I've seen some shit. People didn't like coming over because people would get pushed up or down the stairs. People would see stuff. Just wild stuff. You're just like, man, this is crazy. I remember one time specifically, we had these wooden ornamental type like fork and spoon. They're probably about a couple feet tall. They're not heavy or anything, but they would hang on the wall. And I was sitting in the living room. I'm like 10 years old. And I got like the prickly feeling on the back of my neck. And I was just like, oh man, something's about to go down. And all of a sudden, like this thing went flying off the wall across the kitchen and broke. And there was nobody in there. And I ran towards it. Like, I feel like from the get-go, I was meant to be in the military of some sort. But between my grandfather's influence and just being into that type of thing as a kid and like running towards conflict, like it was like in me.
Yeah, that's not, I don't feel like that's the more common response to that type of thing. I think it's definitely more flight or freeze in those scenarios.
Yeah. And I don't like seeing it. I don't want anything to do with it. Like people that ghost hunt or people that like haunted houses, like y'all can keep that. Like I don't want anything to do with it. But if stuff's hitting the fan, like I'm gonna go towards it. And I guess like a lot of it is because there was a lot of drama in my family. Like my sisters ran away a lot. They would come back. They'd be pregnant. I was an auntie at 9 years old. So I was changing diapers. I was helping change diapers, helping make bottles, holding a baby. Like sometimes I was babysitting, not at 9, but like throughout the years. And I think a lot of that really made me resentful towards children, because I was like, where's my childhood? Because I feel like I'm
Absolutely.
spending a
Yeah.
lot of it, and it was always, don't be like your sisters, don't be like your sisters, and don't do this, don't do that, stay away from the alcohol, and because your father, and do da 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 da. And so like drama was just such a secondary thing. And then school life, I was getting picked on, being back, because when we came back to the same crap hole city that I was originally in before we moved. And like from the time I was in third grade till the time I was in my sophomore year, till I left to another city with my mom, my stepdad, like it was hell. I mean, it was awful. Like, I don't know why, at that time, like I never fit in with a clique. I never wanted to, I never cared to. And like, but that's how it was. Like, I wasn't the freak, I wasn't the jock, I wasn't the nerd, I wasn't the popular kid, I wasn't the rich kid. And even though I did and listened to the same stuff that everybody else did, I just could not fit in. It was like, and I wore a lot of masculine clothes. So like even as a little girl, I hated wearing dresses. It was like punishment. But like, so I always wore, like jeans or Dickies, which I don't know if you know what that brand of Dickies. They're like work pants type of brand. They're comfortable when they break in. I can't remember what kind of, like, what they're made out of, but they're comfortable. But like more masculine type things, t-shirts and whatnot. And so like I had people would ask me, are you a boy or a girl? Oh, you're so hot, will you go out with me? Like stupid shit like that. So like even now, like I can never find myself like when it comes to like looks and stuff, I'm just like, like I was broken down so hard by so many people for so long. It was just like, but I was always told, if you ignore them, they'll go away. And like, they never went away. So I don't know what happened there. But if they would have taught me to punch them in the mouth and, that would be it, then maybe that's what I should have done. But I was never really, violent or anything like that. But it was just, I internalized everything just because everybody had their own, own problems, that I just never talked to anybody. I just held everything in. And then, if I got pushed and pushed and pushed, it would be like, I would just blow up and I would just start, yelling and hollering at people. And they're like, dude, what is wrong with you? And I'm just like,
Wow.
I don't know. Like, so it was like so much, mishmash of things. And
See, everything that you've just said, I feel like is going to resonate with every single person that listens to this episode. The way that we are treated by our peers growing up stays with us for the rest of our lives, no matter what we do to reverse that. And as you said, you internalize it and you just carry it with you. And I imagine that when we discuss deconstruction on this show, there's probably a process that people are encouraged to go through to work through that same level of experience that we've been affected by just growing up, not only in educational settings but family settings, and the path to individualism and self-identity and all of those things. You've just worded it so beautifully, and I feel like that is really going to speak to people, and it kind of leads us into the next part of your journey, because in your emails to me, you talked about how, things were okay until your parents separated, you moved back, and then things were just really hard for you. You found yourself becoming increasingly more angry, despite your maternal grandfather's positive male role model influence on you and trying to get you involved in disciplined things like martial arts, and you kind of trying to find music and something that was an outlet for you and your anger, but you felt like that just continued to build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, once my parents actually wound up getting divorced, like I was actually pretty excited about it because I was over the fighting. But like it didn't solve anything because I was still going to school. And I would be bouncing back and forth between my father and my mother, and it was like this back and forth thing, right? And like then I'd be like a brat, and I was like, well, if I can't do this, then I'm just going to go to my mom, and my mom will let me do it. But then my mom wouldn't let me do it, so then I go back to my dad, and like it was just like, and then we're talking 11, 12 years old, and then the hormones start coming in, and like and it was around 13 or so I started like drinking. And it started off with like wine coolers and like no big deal. And one thing, let me go back like to the the growing up and stuff. The one thing I deal with, like my insecurities and everything, is a lot of self-deprecating humor. And one of the other things is like I try to take that power from people. Like I try to just talk shit about myself so that other people can't do it. I don't want them to get that self-gratification that they've insulted me in somehow. So like it's one of those things that I've I guess learned throughout the years, because like I just don't want people to get that self-satisfaction that they've actually like might have upset me. But anyway, neither here nor there. Yeah, I started off with wine coolers, and I had resources. And eventually, I started skipping school, and I was drinking, like, I don't know if you know what a 40 ounce is, but it's literally 40 ounces of malt liquor, alcohol. And as I got older, I would drink one, and then I was like, I'll drink two. I think I got up to like three. That's a
Oh my
lot of alcohol
goodness.
for someone who was a teenager, but would do it all the time. But my dad was never around. I was a fucking latchkey kid. So like, we were just, because my sister, the one that I'm close to, she was still running. She was running away too, and they would bring her home, and then she'd leave because my dad would get pissed. He'd fucking punch a hole in the wall, start yelling and screaming. Of course, he would find reasons to, and that's one of the things that I know I've learned throughout this whole ordeal is I've learned to deal with things the way my dad did, is that he would always go to anger for anything. If he was scared, if he was sad, if he was pissed, he would always get angry. And I never understood why, but I was like, that's his fucking free pass to go out and go get drunk. I get it now, because that's what I did. And, that's something I'm still working on is, my try not to go straight to anger when something, bothers me, because, I'm not going to go out and drink, but I also know like that's kind of like one of the, one of my triggers, right? So like, it was always, get pissed off, and, I'm out and you wouldn't see him for a while, like the night or the day or whatever. And it was just kind of like, okay, dude, like, let's just stop finding reasons to drink. One of the things that I learned from him was to never expect much out of people. He made so many empty promises to me, and there'd be times where he would say, oh, I'm going to pick you up after work, we're going to go do something, or we'll go out and do something on Saturday, and it never happened. I think one of the most, I'd say traumatizing things that happened was I was at one of my sister's apartment, and my other sister was with me. My dad promised he was going to pick me up after work or whatever it was. And I'd have my jacket on, I'd have my stuff with me, like, oh yeah, he's really going to get me this time. He's really going to get me this time. And he never showed up. And my sister would get so pissed because she would see my heart break every time, and she's like, he's not going to get you. And I'm like, shut up. Like I get so mad, like living in this denial, like she's right, but I just want to believe that he would actually come through for me. And he didn't. And my sister's like, he's at the fucking bar, like, watch. And she called the bar that he was at, and he was there. Called him, and he put me on the phone, and he fucking chewed my ass out for calling him at the bar where I'm trying to figure out when he was coming to get me. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And like, it was like at that moment when I was like, you know what? It's just, he's just never gonna keep his word ever. And that was one thing from my grandfather, is a person's only as good as their word. And, and his word wasn't worth anything. And I was just like, it hit me at that point where I was like, all right, I got you. Like this just it's just not gonna happen. I got it. So, I learned a lot, good and bad, from my father. And that was probably one of the worst, where I was just like, man, like you love the alcohol that much. And it's so crazy for me to be in the same position where you would want to get away from that. But I had no one to turn to. I was by myself. It was literally like my father and myself, and living in an apartment, and he would be gone so much. And I was just like, what do I do? Well, I mean, if it works for him, maybe it works for me too. Like, I was like, I don't know. And so I did that for a little bit. And thankfully, when I was going into my junior year of high school, I moved with my mom, my stepdad, and life just, man, it was awesome. I graduated. I barely graduated on time. I had missed so much school and did little to nothing in my freshman and sophomore year. I had to go to summer school my junior and senior year of high school to graduate on time because I was so behind. But when I went there, nobody bothered me. Nobody cared like what I looked like. Nobody bothered me for nothing. Like they didn't care.
Was
And
this like a bigger place that you'd moved to? Because I feel like a lot of the time that small town mentality means that people focus a lot more on things that just should not be relevant or just things to focus on a day-to-day basis, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. Actually, it wasn't. It's actually, I think the part of it was just people had more money out there. They had a little bit more, a little bit more. Everybody had, a certain social status living in this city. I mean, the people weren't like super crazy rich, but it was middle class, upper middle, where the other place was more, you had a lot of broke people, and then you had like a patch of rich, quote unquote, richer people who just thought their shit didn't stink. So, crap runs downhill. So the rich kids are picking on the other kids are going to pick on me because I'm not going to do anything. It's just crazy. But even with friendships, like I got burned out by people hard. Like people I thought were my friends, totally fucked me over, like I'm, 13, 14, whatever. And, you start getting into, boys or whatever. And I was confused because
romance. You get involved in potential romance.
Right, of course. And like at that point, I didn't know what I was into, but if it was boys, if it was girls, I just found people attractive. Like I didn't think it mattered. But where I was at, this town, there's a lot of homophobia. There was a lot of racism. My sisters all have had, African American boyfriends, and you would have people saying very unsavory things or unsavory looks. And again, going back to like my wardrobe, I remember walking to my friend's house, and these kids, I didn't know who the fuck they were. They're throwing like, it was during the winter, they're throwing snowballs and ice at me. Like, are you gay? Are you gay? Like, what are you doing? Why aren't you saying anything? And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what does it have to do with anything? Like, what? It was just like, it was just, no matter where I went, it was just so hurtful. Like the way that people would just not only just treat me, but just how they are. I mean, if you're saying this stuff to me, you're clearly comfortable saying it to other people. Like, that's not okay. Like,
it almost makes you wonder how they're being treated in their own lives by the people that influence them as well, which is also quite sad to think about.
Well, at the time, I wasn't thinking about it then.
Of course not, no.
But yeah, like think about it now. It's like, what kind of lifestyle were they, their parents, and what was going on with them and whatever, and they're just taking it out on me because I'm just not going to defend myself because it's just not worth it. And it was just like stuff like that. So like I remember this one guy that I was really into. I was like 15 at the time, and he was 18, going on 17, going on to 18. And he had found out that I had a thing for him, and he was just like, hey, you're cool. You're just too young. And I was like, hey, I got you. That's cool. Like, I respect that. And so I told my cousin, because my cousin lived a couple houses down. We all played hockey and football and stuff together. Like, we had this little, we were like in this small, decent housing projects. And so we all hung out and stuff, and we all went to school together and whatever. And this girl I thought was my friend finds out, because she is into him too, and we're the same age, same grade, same everything. And she was like, oh yeah, I like him too. And my cousin's like, well, he's not going to be interested because he already told, D, blah, 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 she's too young and da, da, da. And she's like, oh yeah. So it was almost like a challenge. And lo and behold, they wound up start dating. And I was like, wow, that's fucking cool. You're both a piece of shit. Like, so it was just like, I just always found myself to be a loner because I just could not trust people. I just could not put faith in people. Like, I was always being let down in my mind, and I was just like, man, this is awful. And like, one of the things that at that time, like, I was really thinking about just ending my life. Whew, hold on. I'm good. We got this. But the reason why I didn't, this is so fucked up. The reason why I wouldn't do it is because I thought I'd make them happy if I did it. So it was almost like me being defiant, going, well, I'm going to stick around because you want me to die. So I was like, no, I'm going to stick around. And so I did. I got through it, and we made the most of it. But moving forward to better times, going to high school and all that, and leading into what got me into the Marine Corps and whatnot, was going into my senior year. It was, I want to go to college. I want to be a mortician. I want to go to mortuary school, this, that, and the other. And I had been shortly after I turned 18, which was in April. And I got a phone call from a recruiter. And I was just like, because I never really thought about it, because my mom kept poo-pooing the idea. I was like, Mom, I think it'd be really cool to go into military. I'd love to go into Army. And she's like, absolutely not. And she never really gave me a reason why. So I always just assumed, it was maybe because, my grandpa was in Korea. Maybe something changed him from the war. Like, I don't know. He never talked about it. So, like, I really don't know. And then, and then I was just like, well, that's not a good excuse for me. Like, but I just, throughout the years, I never thought about it. So when he called and was like, hey, is this so-and-so? And I said, yeah. And he was like, have you ever thought about joining the Marine Corps? And I was just like, well, I mean, I never really thought about it because, it was never anything that I could really talk about at home, and he was like, well, he pitched, he's like a car salesman, man. They pitch the shit to you, and you're just like, I can get down with this. And so we talked, talked for at least a half hour or so. I mean, we were chatting, and he's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, man, fucking come get me, like, right now. He was like, are you serious? I was like, yes, this is my address. Come get me. He's like, no, we're leaving right now. We're going to be in your driveway in about 5 minutes. I said, well, come get me. And so they did. We went through, whatever. Gosh, it's been so long. I can't remember all the process, but I was like, yeah, let's do this.
So you're old enough at this point to go, or do you need to have anything signed by your mum at this point?
No, I was 18. I just turned 18.
Right.
And so the decision.
Oh, yeah, in the April, yeah.
Yeah. And so, we did whatever. They do like a height and weight. You got to have your height and weight standards. I think I was like 15, 20 pounds overweight, which really then, I mean, I wasn't fat then, but like their height and weight standards are, if I remember correctly, as of late, I think they're going to revisit the height and weight standards. I don't know what they're going to do with them, but like whatever. So I had to lose weight to get in. So instead of going right after like graduation day, like I had to wait a little bit just to make sure that I had the weight off, keep it off, that type of thing. So I don't know, to do like the ASVAB and be part of was it the MEPS program? I forget what the hell that even stands for, but that's where you do all your physical and pre-boot camp stuff and whatnot. But yeah, I remember getting home and my parents, well, my mom and stepdad weren't home when I got the phone call, but my stepdad was home when I got back, so they must have came home from work or whatever. And he was in the Navy, so he was all about it. When I told him, I was like, I want to go. I just came back from the recruiting office. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And he was like, that is freaking awesome. I said, yeah, that's cool, but like, we got to break this to my mom. And he was like, I got you. So we literally, when she got home, we literally had to sit her down at the table and say, Mom, we got to talk. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And she was crying, not tears of joy. She was so upset. I was like, Mom, like, this is a great decision. Like, this is awesome. I've always wanted to go. Because she's like, well, what made you want to do this? And like, Mom, I've been talking about this for years. Like, I never specifically said the Marine Corps. I always said like Army, just as, Army, like whatever. But they're the only ones that called me. I'd always get crap in the mail and I would just toss it because I was like, I don't really care about this. But I was like, they called me and I said, all right, let's do this. I mean, whatever. So I was at that point, I started working out, like running a lot and just, doing everything I could academically to make sure that there was no issues, and I was just like, let's go. And so I did. And when it came to graduate, I had to pretty much beg my principal, like, can I walk across the stage? Because I had to go to summer school. And if you don't have your diploma, you're not supposed to go across the stage to get your little, diploma holder thing. And I said, listen, I'm going into the military, as soon as I graduate. I just want to do this for my family, so that they can, see me go and do all these things. And she was like, all right. She's like, I got you, so I got to go across the stage, get my diploma. There's nothing in it. It's just the case, and I was like, whatever. So we got that moment and did the summer school thing and just kept working at it. And yeah.
So the summer school program was, as you said, like pre-basic training to get you ready for basic training, which is to get you ready for the Marines.
No, the summer school was through my high school. That was just to graduate.
Right.
I was so behind. Like, I think I had to go to summer school for like English and like social studies. Like,
right. Okay. So to meet the height and weight requirements of the Marines, obviously you can't change your height. But to fit within the weight restrictions, you have to take it upon yourself to meet those requirements, or is there a program that you enroll into that helps you get to that stage?
No, I had to do everything on my own, but my recruiters were so cool. Like, they're like, you're right there, you're just a couple pounds off, and they would take me out for like crazy runs so I can get that weight off. There are some that will give you like, I don't know if it's like a, what is it? Like a, what is that? Oh, I forget what it's called. Well, they can get in while you're still a little bit overweight because they know that you're going to lose that weight while you're in boot camp.
Right.
I don't know if they still do it, but when I was in, they would mark you'd have everything issued to you. You had a green, PT top, your t-shirt,
Mm-hmm.
And what they would do is they would mark, either it was just green, typical, whatever, or if you had, I think it was like really fair skin, they would put, I think, a white stripe on your shirt so that you had to wear sunscreen so that you didn't get like fried while you were outside. Because technically that's destruction of government property at that point. So whatever. So people that had really fair skin, they'd have a white stripe on their shirts. So they can make sure they have sunscreen and stuff on and have it available to them. And
My
then,
goodness.
yeah, if you were
there's so much to unpack here. Let me just go over a few things before we skip on to the next part. So first of all, I wanted to say that I am so glad that we are able to have this conversation today, despite the ill mental health that you have experienced. I'm really, really thankful that you are here and that I'm able to have this conversation and connection with you. And I feel it's really important to just make a note of that. And secondly, I'm wondering, how did this recruiter get your number? Because when you said that you got a phone call from a recruiter, I'm thinking, is it like when somebody's evangelizing door to door and they just happen to knock on random doors and say, hey, do you want to join our religion? And you say, let's hear more about it. And then when they do phone you, even if it's random, do they know your age? Are people in your age group targeted more so than others because maybe you don't have a set direction at that point? Do you think it's certain demographics of people that may come from lower income households and live in more impoverished areas? And also, like you said that you had a lengthy conversation with these people. Was there like a love bombing aspect in that initial phone call that had you like, I love this guy. He's saying all the things I want to hear.
Yeah. Oh, that was a big part of it. I think he got our information because what my mom and I used to do at the time, because the internet was, I mean, I don't want to say fairly new, but like websites were pretty, I don't know, so basic compared to what they are now. And one of the things that we used to like to do was go on different websites and get free stuff. So I think between either myself, I'm guessing it was me, since they knew my name, is I must have went on their website and to get like free pencils or free bumper stickers, and that's how they got my name and my number and started that whole thing off. So that's almost positive that's how they got my information.
And in terms of recruiting from certain areas and age brackets, do you think that plays a part in who the military might target?
Probably. I would think that they would want to find people that were 17, 18, because even if you're 17, like you were asking before, you can join or sign up as long as you get authorization from like a parent or guardian to start that whole process. So they probably are like, okay, these kids are high school, and let's get them going in and thinking about it. Maybe they weren't thinking about it. Let's really pitch our game. And because they did, I don't know if they offered bonuses, or if they did, it was limited to certain like MOSs or jobs. But I remember my mom was so pissed. So she made my recruiters come over to the house and she scolded them and was like, I can't believe you. And this is my baby and you better take care of her. I don't want her going to war and dying and da 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 da. And they were like, yes, ma'am. And they were, ma'am and sir and all this. And my mom just blasted them. It was so embarrassing, to be honest. I was like, Mom,
It's funny because you probably look back on those moments now and find them quite endearing.
Oh yeah, oh for sure. I mean, it's not like my mom is anti-military by any means. It's just she loves the military. She loves, what it stands for and has respect for the soldiers and service members and but it was me being the baby.
Of course, yeah. And
Whatever.
you said that your grandfather didn't talk a lot about his experiences, and maybe your mum can remember, how he was when he came home. This is purely speculation on my part. Right. Maybe how he was when he came home, maybe he'd changed, or maybe he'd talked to her about some things that he found difficult within those experiences, and maybe she just didn't want the same thing for you, or maybe her partner being associated with the armed forces as well, being involved through the Navy. Who knows, all the different things that may have caused her to have that reaction. But yeah, she's your primary caregiver, so of course she's going to be feeling all sorts of things when you tell her that you're, as you said before, running headfirst straight into danger.
Right. Yeah, and it's crazy, like, think about all the stuff that I've been through, good, bad, and indifferent. When there's a lot of drama or a lot of tension or whatever around people, between people, not necessarily my own family, but just people in general, I always seem to be really, really cool-headed. Like, hey, like, let's chill. Like, let's think about this instead of, hey, let's incite the riot. Like, let's be cool about this. Like, relax. Like, there's no need for all of this. So like, even though I run towards the danger, like, there's still got to be a balance, right? So like, if shit's hitting the fan, well, let's assess what is it, what is going to happen if, A, B, and Z happens. So, like, prime example, and this was even like anything like between two people, like my nephew, he was, I don't know, 4 or 5. He was playing with his brother, and I was with my oldest sister and at her apartment, and I heard a loud thud, and I was like, oh, that ain't good. And he's whining, and he comes in, there's blood all over his face. And I was like, oh shit. And like, my sister is freaking out, and I'm like, dude, it's his eyebrow. Like, he cut his eyebrow on the corner of a bed, the bed post thing. It was metal, and he cut his eyebrow and had to get a couple stitches, but she thought it was his eye, and I was like trying to tell her, like, it's his eyeball, like, or not his eyebrow, not his eyeball. And like, her freaking out is making it worse for him because it's already a head wound. Like, chill. He's gonna be okay. Like, and it's just like, and not even just circumstance like that, but just in general, like, dude, what are you pissed about? Like, if there's drama between some people, like, what is violence gonna do? Or, whatever the situation is, like, just chill.
That's a great example. If it's a demon or a ghost in the kitchen, like,
right, I got you.
So something else that you said before then that was quite interesting was that your mum wasn't anti-military, and I just wanted to use that statement as a kind of a segue for me to say something about my perspective on this, because after I released my first episode talking about the military, there was an individual who left a negative review about the podcast, saying that we shouldn't be talking about the armed forces on this podcast because it's not appropriate. Now, I understand that the podcast is called The Cult Vault, and that comes with the insinuation that we are just discussing cults on this show. But anybody who is an avid listener who tunes in regularly, like yourself, Dee, will know that there's been a few disclaimers that I've put out where I've said that we will be discussing not only cults, but captive organizations, high demand groups, high demand religious groups, and so forth. So it's really a vast thing that we're exploring now on this podcast. It's not strictly just cults. And the review from this person, which I thought was quite interesting in itself, that they'd left this review, basically like defending the Marines when a lot of all the armed forces, when a lot of the conversation that I'd had in that episode was actually about the mentality that a lot of people have in America regarding the armed forces. I'm not sure whereabouts this person is in the world, but let's just let's just think about it from an American perspective. And rightly so, this person said, you know, that as long as war exists, there is a need for the armed forces. And that can't be disputed. And that's a conversation for another time, very lengthy, kind of, there's ethical and moral things to consider when we have those types of conversations. It's like saying, does God exist? Yes or no? It's not one of those things you can just answer. What the individual did say is that we shouldn't be discussing that on the show because it's a necessary high demand group. I'm not coming at this from an anti-military perspective. It is a high demand group that exists. It is a high demand organization. And I'm just interested in looking at the methodologies that are in place in these groups that also exist in other groups that may be negative high demand groups that exist in the world, because there are traits that and earmarks of cults and cult-like methods that we'll see in the military that exist in other groups where people are being abused and exploited. That's not to say that abuse and exploitation doesn't take place in the armed forces. We know it does from people coming forward and talking about the fact that they've been exploited and abused. But I'm not saying that the military exists purely for those two things. So I just wanted to kind of get that statement out there, that it's not an anti-military thing that we're discussing today. We are literally just looking at the armed forces and specifically the Marine Corps and the methodologies that they use, that other groups take influences from and inspiration from and apply it to themselves to create that oneness in their own organizations that we discuss on the show. And I know that you said something similar in your emails to me as well, that people may be sort of a bit skeptical about why we're covering the armed forces, because it seems like you're promoting it as a cult because it's on a podcast called The Cult Vault. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into things. So you say to the recruiters, come and pick me up, I'm ready to go. And so they come and they say, yep, great, you can enlist or enroll. Are they different, enlist and enroll?
It's enlisting. Enrolling is more of like if you're enrolling in a college, you know, you're gonna start in a semester or whatever. But I guess, I mean, if you really want to think of it as though, I guess it's kind of one of the same, right? So like, but we call it enlisting. So we have to swear, you know, we do an oath. I think we do it at MEPS. We do some kind of an oath or whatever. I don't remember what it is. And just saying, you know, you're gonna be part of the military or whatever. I don't even remember what the hell. And, you know, it's just like, you know, all these different things. And, you know, and even going back to what you're saying, like, I needed direction in life. I needed discipline. I needed to stand up for myself. I didn't have that confidence in me. And I knew that going into the military, regardless of what branch it was going to do that. And so I was like, well, shit, you know, I'm going into the best branch in the, you know, in the military. I don't care who you ask, it's the fucking Marine Corps. But you know, I was like, I'm gonna do this. I know I'm gonna do it. I'm a very headstrong person, and failure is not an option ever. And so when I enlisted and went to boot camp in August, towards the end of August, I don't remember how I got there. I feel like it was a bus. I don't know if I got flown down there or not. I remember being on the bus when you get to Parris Island, but I don't remember how I got there. It's all a blur. Like, once you get there, it's like, I wish I could have gotten some of the letters that I sent to my mom, my sister, because they kept them all. And I remember reading them at one point going, oh shit, I forgot all about that. You know, because everything happened so freaking fast. And, you know, I feel like, I don't want to say brainwashing, but I feel like boot camp in military in general, there is a necessary evil to have to get your mind set to, and mind you, I was in peacetime. This was prior to 9/11. So like there was not boohoo much going on in the world that was, nothing like, you know, after 9/11 and after, and what's going on in the world now. And so like, I was just like, whatever. And we got there and going to boot camp, and it was, gosh, man, it was like early zero, we say zero dark stupid. And you got the infamous yellow footprints outside of the building. Once you get in, you got a drill instructor comes on and gets you, you're getting off that bus, get off my bus, get off my bus. And you're lined up, you're in your civilian gear, and whatever you brought with you, like, they take it. It gets locked away till you're out. It's almost like being in jail. I used to watch like Locked Up and stuff. They take your shit. When you get out, you get it, you're gone.
Yeah, it sounds similar to a lot of the troubled teen programs that we've talked about on the show as well. So immediately there's that level of extreme discipline and oneness. You're all expected to walk in the same direction and follow the lines and stay on the footprints. And just before we get into basic training, you've said MEPS a couple of times. Is this an acronym for something?
I don't remember what it stands for, but yeah, it's some kind of military entry program of sorts. It's just
right. I think that's where I might have got confused with the, you went to summer school so that you could graduate. And then you were going to MEPS to get ready for basic training.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And is it common for people to go to MEPS before they go into the military?
I think everybody has to, because I feel like they do like your physicals like prior to make sure that you're healthy and that there's no any kind of maybe physical
right
that would exempt from.
Google says your visit to a military entrance processing station determines your mental aptitude as well as your physical and moral qualifications for enlistment in the army. So that basically is exactly what you just said. And that makes sense, especially going back to what I'd discussed on the previous episode, where the same sorts of steps were taken into Ryan's time in the Marine Corps. So that's interesting that those two were the same. And Paris Island, where is this located?
It's in South Carolina. So this is the only place that females train to become Marines. We have a recruit depot in San Diego and Paris Island, San Diego, California, Paris Island, South Carolina. Both of them have male recruits, but Paris Island is the only one that has females that train there.
And has it always had female recruits?
Yeah.
And what if you don't assign yourself to one of those two categories?
So when I was in, that was not anything that ever was an issue that ever came up. So I really don't know how that works now. I know that there's been a lot of changes with a lot of different things, but when it came to like, are you talking about like gender identity type things? Yes, I have no idea. It was just, either San Diego or Paris Island based on male or female, but we never had anybody that at least openly identified as, transgender or anything like that. And I was in during the don't ask, don't tell era. So one of the things that they do before like you start training at boot camp, once you get there, pretty much during receiving, it's almost like a moment of truth, quote unquote. And they try to scare you saying, if you're on medications that you're not supposed to be on that would exempt you, like anxiety meds or something like that, or maybe if you have certain mental disorders like bipolar or whatever, where you have to take medication, like you have to take it. You could be exempt. And if you lied, it'd be, you could face jail time if they find out because you lied and whatever. And it's all like, whatever, dude. So this is their quote unquote moment of truth. And another one thing is, if you're, if you identify as homosexual, now is your time, like, to leave, because if we find out, like, blah blah blah, you're, all these things are going to happen, like,
Well,
and you would get kicked out if they found out you were homosexual. You would get kicked out. So
why is that? Is it because the genders are separated and there's no sex between people allowed within the basic training? Or is it that does it go back to something like the AIDS scare or the AIDS pandemic that just has this like strange mentality around people that identify as homosexuals?
I don't know, but I'm about to go on a little bit of a tangent. So, when I was in, it was a thing. And then once Obama was in, he got rid of it. And I can't remember if Trump brought it back or not. But I don't know why. I think it's bullshit. It really shouldn't matter, because at the end of the day, like, it's no one's business who someone else is fucking. It's not, I don't care what else is doing. It has nothing to do with me. And it shouldn't matter in combat. Like, if you're in a combat role, people aren't worried about having sex with anybody. We need to survive. Like, take that hatred somewhere else, dude, because it ain't working. And like, one of the things I used to tell people, especially guys, because guys are the worst when it comes to that stuff. And I'm like, if you fucking think another person of the same gender finds you attractive, you're the fucking problem, because not everything revolves around you. Not everybody thinks that you're attractive, and don't think that another guy is going to go after you because you're a guy. Like, get your head right. So I don't know if it's part of a, maybe it was just.
Well, I know that homosexuality at one point in history was illegal around the world, and it still is in some places. Maybe it was just something that took a really long time to change. I've just found something on Wikipedia that I'll read quickly that answers some of the questions that we're kind of just discussing here. And it says that gay and lesbian citizens have been allowed to serve openly in Her Majesty's Armed Forces since 2000. The United Kingdom's policy is to allow lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer personnel to serve openly, and discrimination on a sexual orientation basis is forbidden. It is also forbidden for someone to pressure LGBTQIA+ members or individuals to come out. All personnel are subject to the same rules against sexual harassment, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. So that all sounds great on paper. Of course, I'm not sure that translates as black and white as it says here, but on the history, it says Stonewall, a British LGBT rights pressure group, spearheaded the movement to rescind British military prohibitions against openly LGBT service members. It began when Robert Ely, who had served in the British Army for 17 years, approached Stonewall. The discovery of a letter had led to his sexual orientation being disclosed, and he was subjected to an investigation and thrown out of the army. Skip forward to February 2005, the Navy joined Stonewall's Diversity Champions programme, followed in November 2006 by the Royal Air Force and the British Army, the largest of the three services in June 2008, to promote good working conditions for all existing and potential employees and to ensure equal treatment for those who are lesbian, gay and bisexual. At London Pride 2008, all three armed services marched in uniform for the first time, whilst the Royal Navy had marched in uniform alongside other military colleagues in Proud to Serve t-shirts for the preceding 2 years. All three services openly recruit at gay pride events, recognise civil partnerships as equal to marriage, and enjoy supporting homosexual personnel at the very highest levels. So that kind of gives us an idea of the UK version. And from a brief look there on the internet, it seems as if America was kind of aligned with that. So, of course, if you're listening outside of those two places, not too sure what the history is, but it would be interesting to know. So if you live in somewhere that is outside of the two areas we've just discussed, email me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com and tell me where you are in the world and what the policies say on the LGBTQIA plus community in your country, in your area, and how it's changed over time, because I would just love to hear it. I'm really interested in gaining sort of like a whole perspective of a subject when we talk about it. So that would be great. So you arrive in Paris Island, you're in the don't ask, don't tell era. So, I mean, are men and women segregated in terms of where you sleep and all of that stuff?
Yeah, the men were trained separately from the females. Like, we didn't train together at all. The only time we really saw each other, like the male platoons, was at the chow hall, the rifle range, and maybe working in the chow hall maybe towards the end. But we had very limited contact with the males, and don't get caught looking. Because they will light your ass up.
Right.
You know, they really wanted to, you know, there's, you know, no sex, no, you know, somehow, I don't even know how people would be able to sneak out, but who knows? I don't know. If it was possible to, you know, really, and Sundays. Because on Sundays we had 4 hours of like religious time. So if you worshiped or whatever, you had that 4 hours. And if you didn't, then you had time to be in the barracks and do whatever you got to do. But that was your time. So, like, I don't know, like, I was not interested. I was solely interested in becoming a Marine. I didn't care about, you know, and if that's what you're worried about, then, you know, that's, you know, that's a whole different deal. You're in the wrong place.
and giving people 4 hours for prayer time and religious downtime on a Sunday kind of leads me to assume that it's primarily Christianity that is catered to within the armed forces, would you say?
They had different services. I know they had like Presbyterian, Catholic, they had all kinds of services, but at that time, like in my teenage years, I kind of steered away from religion. I think I was just bitter and angry and going, why? I don't know, just asking why too much. And so at that time, I didn't do Sunday service because I just had no interest in it. And I just wanted to get ahead of the game. I wanted to write letters. I wanted to, you know, clean up and, you know, just get myself squared away or whatever. But even on your dog tags, because you get issued dog tags, you could put your religion on it, or you could put no preference, or you could put whatever. And, you know, you would have that on. And so, you know, I guess it, you know, you can identify as whatever religion. Whatever,
I mean, outside of Christianity, though, would they, you know, if somebody, because you said this is pre 9/11, so I'm sure after 9/11, anybody that associated themselves with the Muslim faith may have been possibly observed in a different way. But do you remember anybody kind of from the Muslim faith, or even the Jewish religion, where people observe Sabbath on a Saturday as opposed to church services on a Sunday?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if we had any Jewish recruits in our platoon, but we definitely didn't have anybody that was identified as like Muslim or any of the Middle Eastern countries. I think we had, you know, white, different Latina, you know, like Mexican, Puerto Rican, Black.
And Christianity is still massive in those countries as well. It's just an interesting question for me because, you know, you mentioned Presbyterian services and Catholic services. still under that massive umbrella. So I wonder how much that's changed now with America becoming such a diverse country with so many different nations all existing on the same continent, and so it'd be interesting now. If anybody has any insight into that, please get in touch and let me know. But you step off the bus in Paris Island and you said that it is just from you didn't want to use the word brainwashing. Sometimes people might say thought reform or indoctrination. I feel like that phrase is in flux at the moment, and people may be trying to work out other ways to basically say the same thing. But the minute you arrive on Paris Island or at Paris Island, the whole process of breaking you down as an individual and rebuilding you in the image of a member of the Marine Corps, it starts at that very moment.
Yeah, as soon as you get off the bus, you're moving fast. You're, I sir, yes sir, I ma'am, no ma'am, and you better fucking be loud, and you're just like, it's fucking dark, stupid in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning, like nobody knows what the hell's going on, but we're doing stuff, we're moving, we're going, we're grabbing our issued, our gear, our PT gear, our go fasters, tenny runners, our sneakers, and we're just going through this process. We had to get, shots, and there's a lot of downtime, but you had to keep your eyes open, even though you wanted to just pass out like holy crap. But yeah, that, it's, I hate to say brainwashing, it's whatever, but you have to get programmed to be able to live as a Marine, like understanding what we do, what we are. We're the, in my eyes, I don't, you could ask any other branch, so it's like something different, but we're the, most badass fighting force in the world, and you need to be mentally prepared accordingly. I went in, crazy enough, open contract, which means you can get any job that the Marine Corps wants you to have. So I could have been a cook, which has since been phased out. I could have been a motor T person. I could have been communications. I could have been who knows what. But I actually, they assigned me as an administrative clerk, which is cool. I think they did that because my mom gave them the 3rd degree. I don't know how much she had in that with my recruiters and them communicating. But yeah, I mean, even still, though, you still learn everything as a basically trained Marine. I mean, we still did, obstacle courses and all the knowledge, and we had to do like their martial arts type training and, the rifle range and, all these different things. Like, we're trained to kill. That's what we fucking do. And if that's not cool with you, then you're in the wrong place. And so you have to have that, be cool, calm, and collected when things are going crazy around you. That's why there's so much chaos. Like, everything is around combat, and you have to be able to be prepared to handle that. And if you can't, like, people are going to fucking die,
So just to talk us through kind of, you've mentioned you get off, you're off the bus, you're being yelled at, you're not allowed to sleep. So straight away, there's like this high stimulation, sleep deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
You're carrying, all your stuff, so heavy equipment, and even though there's downtime and you feel like you could fall asleep, you're not allowed to. And then you're introduced to where you're going to be sleeping. And I'm sure the people have seen depictions of this in various TV shows and movies, but what's that like?
It's not bad. Like, it sucks because you're just like, oh my gosh, what's next? When do I get to sleep? When do I get to eat? When do I get to do anything? But it's not as stressful as one would think. It's just a lot of moving and shaking. You don't have time to think. You don't have time to really do anything. But if you move, like if you want to go to the bathroom, you better fucking ask, And I think this is before like training. So it's kind of like, hey, can I make a head call? Because if you say bathroom, they're like, I don't know what the fuck a bathroom is. It's head, and again, moving is one, and having we have road guards. So when we cross the street, we have people, posting, and just getting all these movements down. So when our cycle actually starts with our actual series with our drill instructors, not the receiving ones, it's whole night and day. Like, you're doing all these things. I had to, you get your eyes checked. I got the glasses. So these, the glasses that they issue you, they're called BCGs, which means birth control glasses, because they're so ugly. Nobody wants to touch you. And anyone that knows they are ugly. Thick brown, like rim. Oh, they're awful. They're awful. So, you get issued, if you have glasses, you get those. And they do give you like a little card at the beginning that has like a stipend on it. So we would have to make runs to the PX, like the exchange. It's like a little store where you could buy odds and ends if you need them. I think we only did like 2 of those trips throughout the time. I could be wrong. But if you had to buy something for yourself, you would have to use your own, your own little card and
right.
whatever.
So all of your personal effects are taken away from you, and they are kind of replaced with the military grade issue equipment. Yes. And then you spoke about that kind of oneness where you all wake together, sleep at the same time, eat together. So what does that look like? Obviously, people will recognize, again, from TV shows and movies and such, that the uniforms are all exactly the same. Apart from some people might be wearing different wings and badges. I'm sure there's actual correct terminology for those.
Well, that doesn't come till the end. So there's phases. So once we actually, we in receiving, we're doing the basics of moving in formation. They call the cadence. You start with your left foot, and everybody needs to move all at the same time. And if that's not right, they're going to keep fixing it, and just all these little things. And then we go to our barracks. And once you meet your platoon, your drill instructors, like shit hits the fan, like hard. And that's when you start thinking your life choices real fast. So once you get like all your gear issued to you, your uniforms, your PT gear, your camouflage utilities, your boots, all that stuff. So you have phases. So the first phase, you have your camouflage utilities, but you're wearing tenny runners. You're wearing sneakers, so you look like a freaking idiot. And then, as you go further in, then it's, okay, you can wear them with boots. All right, cool. And then you get the blouser boots, which is where you get the boot. What are they called? I don't know. They're green things that kind of attach around.
Like,
you hook them.
Yeah, like little flaps, little wings.
They're so you can make your trousers presentable, and then at some point you get your name tag, or not your name tag, but your last name on in the U.S. Marines and all that stuff. So there's all these different phases. But yeah, just moving is one. It's hard. Like we're trying, like when you count off, you have to like move your head to the side and say, like 1 or whatever number you are. And people sometimes will count at the same time. So you have like 2 people going 3, and they're like, we got to start over. So like it's this whole process of, we got to march together. We got to make sure that we're counting right. Like we have to make sure that, like when we go to the chow hall, they have to do it at certain times. And like, it's crazy. It's just constant, boom, 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 but it's always together. Nobody, there's no individuals. There is no I, me, or we, is what they say.
What time do you all go to bed?
I thought it was like 9:30 or 10 at night. So when we would be in the rack, as we will call it, we all laid on our racks, and before we covered up or did anything, we did the Rifleman's Creed. We'd say the Rifleman's Creed, this is my rifle, there are many like it, but this one is mine. We go through the whole thing.
Right.
And then we would sing the Marines hymn. And once that was it, then they would say, good night, platoon, like whatever platoon number it was. And we would say, good night, ma'am. And then that was it. Then you're sleeping, unless you had to post as the duty for the night, where basically he would have two recruits at that time, at, I think it was like 3 or 4 hour shifts, something like that, to make sure that all the foot lockers were locked and the rifles were secure. There was nothing shady going on, or if the duty came on deck, you'd have to report. And there'd be times where people didn't lock their lock on their wall lock or their foot locker, and they get some extra PT time on the quarterdeck. Rifles, they would take your rifle, because it was secured to your rack, because the way that there was, like the bedpost and where the rack was, you would have the ability to wrap your stuff around and lock it, so that you couldn't just willy-nilly just walk around with a fucking rifle, M16. Then we didn't have ammo or anything, but still, you can still hurt somebody with a rifle even though there's no ammo in it. So just making sure that things are clean, and you would do the laundry at night. You'd make sure that the laundry got changed over, and you'd have to fold the laundry and give it back, put it on the wall or the foot locker of the recruit. And you were doing all kinds of stuff, and then in the morning, that's when you would go to chow. I think you would wake up at 5:30, and that's when shit would start all over again. And it's they count you down, and you'd make your rack. If your shit was jacked up, they would just tear it apart. You start all over. If it wasn't to their standards, you were going to find out real quick, fast, and in a hurry. You're not doing well. And, if one person messes up, everybody messes up. So, one person can't just be jacked up. Everybody's going to be jacked up. You're just damn it. So it was kind of a way, it was almost like you worked as a team, but if someone kept messing up, it was almost like, we're going to turn against you because you're ruining us. What the fuck are you doing? We had a couple like that, and man, it just made me so irritated. I was like, you need to get your shit together, or go home.
It's understandable why that teamwork is promoted, because in a high stress environment or a high arousal environment, where you have a mission or you have an outcome that you need to achieve, it's imperative for the safety of your platoon, for the survival of your platoon, that those same methods of teamwork apply in those situations. So it's easy to see why that environment is encouraged. And actually, I went back through your emails and found exactly what you'd written about the need for things to exist in the way that they do in the Marines. And you wrote, you do need to be programmed to be cool under pressure and function in incredibly stressful situations. It is a high demand organization, and they do what they have to get you where you need to be. The Marine Corps isn't for everyone. A lot of men and women don't make it through for all kinds of reasons. And I feel like that really encapsulated exactly what you've been saying in previous parts of the episode, where you've said, you really do need to be stripped down and rebuilt to be able to function in these situations that Marines might find themselves in. So I just wanted to go back and read that sentence. When I read that the first time, I was like, wow, that really stood out to me, that part. And you're now kind of really getting into the bulk of how that individualism is wiped away, and how you all just become like a sea of the same people. You know, everybody looks the same, everybody sounds the same, everybody acts the same. And what time in the morning do you rise after you've done all of your evening chores and you've gone to bed, and what time you expected to rise?
I want to say it was either 5 or 5:30 in the morning. So we would have to get up, we'd have to get our PT gear on, which is our our shorts, our shirt, and then, our socks and our shoes. And they would count us down. Like, we had to go piece by piece. Where's your, show us your PT shirt. All right, you got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And everybody better be fucking dressed, or we're going to keep going over until we all get it right. And, they would, here's your shoes, get your right shoe, show it, and you'd have fucking people showing their left shoe, and they're like, come on, dude, stop screwing around. Like, it's your right shoe. And I would say, all right, put on your right tenny runner. All right, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, let's go, like.
Oh, that's stressful. That would be stressful for me.
Yeah, it's, but they do it every day. And then you just get used to it. And you're just like, all right, cool. But yeah, like, at first you're just like, dude, what? I just woke up. Like, I need to go to the bathroom, man. Like, let's talk about putting my shoes on. Like, good grief. But, I mean, you got to weed out the weak. And that's how they do it. It's like, man, it's crazy. And we did have, like, I don't remember how big our platoon was when we started, but just for grins and giggles, let's say there's 50 people, which is, I mean, that's nothing compared to the guys. I mean, our platoons are significantly smaller because there's just not a lot of females that joined. And, at the end, we probably had, maybe out of 50, we had like 30 or 35, because they would get dropped for various reasons, whether they wanted to leave, like it wasn't for them, or they couldn't, qualify, during training for, like, we have an initial PFT type thing. I forget what it's called, but you run like a mile and a half, you do your crunches, so the guys do pull-ups. We do what's called a flex arm hang. And the minimum, I think, is like, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds or something. The max is like 60 seconds. And you just hang there. You have a bar that you have to get up on, and you're holding yourself in the air, like on a pull-up bar, and you have to hold yourself as long as you can. And, once your elbows, are straight, your arms are straight out, then, you're done. The time stops. So some people can't do that, so they get dropped. Or, or even further along in, like when we do the rifle range, if you can't qualify on the rifle range, you get dropped, like, bye. And it's various things. It could even be for weight. Some people, they actually gain weight while we're in, and I'm like, I don't know how the hell you gain weight, but okay. Because they're just, it's not like they don't feed you, but you're doing so much, physical activity. It's crazy that anybody could gain weight. I was 135, 36 pounds when I got in, and I dropped down to 126 in 13 weeks. Like, I didn't think I could lose any more weight, but like, I did. I was just like, okay, like, it was crazy.
How is there like anything that identifies people that are like on restricted calories because they need to lose a certain amount of weight, or is that all sort of sorted before you join and get into basic training?
So sometimes it is, because I feel like there's waivers that people can sign, like a weight waiver. They had waivers for like everything back when I was in. I don't know if that still exists, but so like I was mentioning about the white stripe on the shirt, if you are considered a quote unquote fat body or overweight, they would put a red stripe on your shirt, so everybody fucking knew, like, you were that guy or girl, you were that person. And so that would be an indicator that you had to have, different rations of food, or maybe different caloric, smaller portions, or maybe a different diet, more veggies. I don't know. I never had to, but I knew there was one or two in my platoon that had to. But I don't know if it was the entire time or if it was just part of the time, whatever. But yeah, they'll, you know, without saying it, they'll point you out like, oh, you got this certain stripe on your shirt. Well, you're this or you're that. And, drill instructors, whether it's our sister platoon or the guys, like, they'll fucking talk shit. Like, you're just like, dick. But you can't say anything. Like, that's so rude. But I don't know. It's just like, oh, right.
And how long do you exist in this high demand, stressful environment until you're finished and you move on to your next stage within the Marines?
Boot camp is 13 weeks, but 12 of it is training. So like the 1 week would be like you're receiving, and then towards the end it's like you have like your family day and all this other stuff before you graduate. Now I know it's changed, because when I was in, the final thing you had to do was the crucible, and that's when you did all the final stuff. You did a lot of hiking. I think it was like 40 or 50 miles of hiking throughout the whole thing. And like you're doing different exercises with your team as different squads and all these different things. And you do your final hike back, and you would get your Eagle Globe and Anchor, and like there wasn't a dry eye in the place, man. You got that. And that was like, I still get goosebumps, man. And I'm like, this was, 20 years ago. It's like, because that's what you got there for. And like, that's it. And now if I remember correctly, what they do now, and I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll get emails, is I believe they get it when they graduate. So graduation day is when they give them their Eagle Globe and Anchor now. And I feel like because, squawking about, hey, we're a Marine, why are you still treating us as recruits? And they're like, okay, well, you could stay a recruit till you graduate. You want to play games with us? We'll play games with you. If that's how I remember it correctly, which I could be very wrong, but I believe that's what happened. So
all of this stuff that you've experienced leading up to your graduation, do you feel like it kind of disappears in that moment because you're so euphoric when you receive this thing? Do you feel like it kind of negates all of the hardships and stress that you might have experienced in the weeks previous?
Yeah, you get it, and you're just like, everything was worth it. You worked your ass off, you and your sisters, and here it is, the Eagle Globe and Anchor. We have the right to, be called Marine. This is it. Symbol is it. And man, I can remember like just just crying and crying and crying. And just man, you're just like, I'm on top of the world, like nothing can stop me. I did it, and nothing can change that now, because I did everything. I did everything I had to do, and this is what I worked hard for, and this is what I was preparing myself for, and now I got it, and no one can take it away from me. Nope. Not even the Grim Reaper. Like, this is it. And it's the most amazing feeling. Like, even now I'm just like, oh my gosh, what? It's the best.
Do you have a graduation ceremony?
Yes. So all of the platoons, males and female platoons, all go on this big parade deck, and all of us graduate. And they're like, all right, that's it. Once the graduation ceremony is over, that's it. Like, you're released from boot camp, and then you await wherever you're supposed to go next. When I graduated, I actually got 30 days recruiting duty, which was like 30 days of leave, because basically what recruiting duty is is you help your recruiter out trying to find, other recruits to sign up. I was terrible at recruiting.
Right, that's interesting. So
Oh,
that's wow, that really is like some of the other high demand groups we've talked about, where once you're systematically approached and brought into an organization, you're then taught those exact same approaches to go out and do the same thing. Wow, was it interesting for you to learn the techniques that your recruiters had used on you to get you to enlist in the first place?
Yeah. It's funny because like when we would do it, so at first we had like, I don't know, like binders of numbers that I guess people had filled out through various means, and we would have to call them and stuff. We would go to malls, we would go wherever and just say, hey, you interested in, joining the Marine Corps? Like, this is what we got going on. And there was other people that did it too, and they were much better than I was, because I was just like, my shit don't stink, and all I care about is going on to Marine combat training. I really didn't want this. I didn't sign up for it. They just, I guess they, however that worked, I got chosen for that, and I was like, whatever. But we did get, I think one guy got like 3 or 4 people to sign up, and I was like, oh, kudos for you, dude. And you get promotions for stuff like that. So like, if you get people to sign up with you, or in the recruiting duty and all that, you can get meritoriously promoted. I never got meritoriously
Wow,
promoted.
okay.
But yeah, there's definitely incentives. So like, some people came out as a PFC, some people came out a freaking Lance Corporal. Not I, but that's okay, because I was still a Marine, and you can't take that from me.
What's your next step within the Marines? You have your graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go home for a period of time? Oh, also something that we haven't covered is that you're so there's heavy surveillance on you as grunts, which is a word that Ryan taught me in a previous episode. So there's surveillance on you as grunts pretty much 24/7, and there's a heavy restriction on your contact outside of where you're actually based at that time as well during basic training.
I mean, there's eyes everywhere. They will tell you there's eyes everywhere. If it's not another plainclothes Marine, if it's not another drill instructor.
Sometimes you need to take control to make a difference. That's why with FlexPath from Capella University, you're in control. Set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move at a pace that works for you. Discover a different way forward at capella.edu.
Dad is the smartest guy you know, so give him a gift that's just as smart, like a battery-powered smart doorbell from Google Nest that lets him see what's happening at his door and answer it from anywhere. The Google Nest doorbell is now on special buy for only $129.99 and works on any home. Find the best and smartest gifts for Dad. Feels like Father's Day at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Offer valid through June 19th, 2022 at participating U.S. stores and online. Limit 5 per customer.
If it's not, another recruit, like, you are always being fucking watched. And we never tried to test that theory because we've seen people get in trouble we're like, who saw that? Like, because there'd be times where if someone had to go to dental, or if somebody had to go to medical for who knows what, you would either go by yourself, or you'd have to have another recruit go with you. And they're like, don't make us look bad. Don't make us get if we get a phone call that you are acting stupid, like, it's going to be me and you. So like, there's always eyes. They'd always tell you it's always eyes. Just assume you're always being watched. And it's like, all right, I never had to do any of that stuff. So like, it wasn't a big deal, but like, yeah, that was in boot camp. I mean, you couldn't do anything. Like I was mentioned before, like if you like on the rifle range or wherever, where the men and the women would be at the same place, like if you got caught looking, like they would embarrass the shit out of you. There was we were on what's called grass week, which is right before you go on the rifle range, so you learn about the different like sitting, kneeling position, standing position, the different ways that you're going to be shooting your rifle on the range, and windage and all this other stuff. and we were going through our training, and this is outside at the rifle range. And all of a sudden, these two drill instructors brought this male recruit over. He got caught looking at one of our drill instructors. I don't know if he was looking or if he was staring. It didn't matter. He got busted. And they brought him over and made him ask if that drill instructor would be his Valentine. And he did it. And, of course, now instead of 2 drill instructors on him, there was like 3 or 4 drill instructors in his face. So, like, oh man, he got lit up. So, like, don't don't do any of it. It's not worth it, and
so
yeah,
that's kind of akin to some of the public humiliation that we might see in other high demand groups, where a person is pulled up in front of their peer group or congregation or whatever the group might look like, and then they are either shamed or embarrassed, or sometimes in more severe and extreme cases, their confidential and personal information is shared within the group. So again, it's not suggesting that is the intention isn't to inflict that level of trauma on an individual, but it is a technique that we see universally applied within high demand groups, where that might be the outcome, or that might be that is the purpose is to achieve that outcome, or that outcome might be something that comes from that type of technique being used. So it's interesting, again, just to kind of make that connection. And you also mentioned in your writing to me that your communication with the outside world was extremely limited during your time in basic training.
Yeah, so the only time we had downtime was, of course, on Sundays, and we had an hour of like hygiene time before we would hit the rack. And that'll be your time to get your shower in, if you want to write letters. And then what we would do is, when we got out of the shower, we're in our skivvies, we actually had to do hygiene inspections. So we all had to line up on the quarterdeck, which is the front of the barracks, where the DI hut was. Drill instructor would, stay there and whatever. And so we had to go through this script of, I forget what it was. And we had to have our hands out, and we had to go like this, and we had to turn around, and they would look us up and down to make sure, there probably, wasn't any marks or any kind of, I guess, like, dirty nails or, bruises or cuts, or, it was probably more of a, let's make sure that they're clean and they're not hurting themselves, or that type of thing. And once we were done, that was it. So that was always interesting to me, because I was like, turn around. Like, okay. But like, okay, all right, I got it.
I suppose it's better to do it that way than to actually watch people showering, to make sure that they are showering.
Yeah, for sure. Because like when we would come in after our PT sessions in the morning, we literally had time they would give you 5 minutes to shower. So you literally, you got, 40, 50 girls in X amount of showers, and you're fucking running in, going under the water and coming back out. You ain't going to smell like a rose. You're going to smell real good.
Wow, that also feels like there's not much opportunity to keep your body to yourself in that sense as well.
No, I mean, yeah, that, like, the hygiene time was nice, because if there were, maybe certain things that you wanted to, render some extra cleaning to, you had that opportunity. And that's another thing that was interesting, was when it came to all these females being together in one place. Like for me, I never got my menstrual cycle when I was in at all, which was super cool. Everybody, like, a lot of the girls had same cycles. Some of them didn't. Some of them kept getting it because they're on it. The body is so weird. Like, just like, how does that happen? I was ecstatic because I was like, man, I don't want to have to worry about all that stuff. But, as a female,
Yeah.
it's part of your
If you're
anatomy, right?
if you're exercising to that extreme, not to the extreme I mean, pre basic training and during basic training, I mean, it's an extreme change from your everyday life. Then yeah, I don't imagine that dealing, with your menstrual cycle is something that you would really want to do during that time. And so you could write letters to your mom, but you couldn't phone her, or when you were allowed one phone call when you arrived and it was scripted.
Right. So I totally forgot about that. Thank you. As soon as you get there, you can make one phone call, and there's like this little script right next to you, and whether they answer or not, this is what you're going to say. Recruit so and so arrived. I don't remember what the whole thing says, but I'm alive, I'm well, I'll get a hold of you another time, whatever, and that's it. So if they don't answer, then sucks to be you.
Wow.
And there's a drill instructor like, hurry up, but you can hear them in the background like, let's go, and they're probably, I don't remember, if my mom answered. She might have, I don't know, and I just read it and hung up, and that was it. And the only other time that you were able to call was right around Family Day, right before, like a week or two before graduation. And that was literally only to make sure that you had your ride situated. So whatever travel plans you had, because obviously they didn't want anybody getting stuck on the island that shouldn't be, if you didn't have your ride, fixed and stuff.
Yeah, once you're done, you're out of here.
Oh yeah, we don't want you here anymore. Like, you got other things to do. Like, get out. We got some more disgusting things that we got to train. So yeah, so I remember having that phone call, and I don't even know how I even talked to my mom because I was just bawling the whole time. It's like, all right, chill. But, you don't hear anybody, their voice, it's so different. You don't hear it for so long. It seems like forever. And, I've never been away from my family this long, ever. So, being 12, 13 weeks away from my family, I was just like, man, this blows. Like,
having that limited contact. Yeah, absolutely. And something that was interesting in what you said before is that when you started the phone call, it was recruit such and such has arrived. So I forgot to mention that in your emails, you said that you aren't allowed to refer to yourself in the first person. So you're not allowed to say like, I need this, or I need to go and do this, or I'm supposed to do this. You have to refer to yourself in the third person, stripping away more of that individualism.
Yes. Recruit so-and-so requests, to make a head call. Recruit so-and-so requests to go to dental or whatever. Recruit so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's no I, me, or we, ever. And you learn that real quick, like I, or you. If you don't talk to your drill instructor, if you don't say drill instructor, sergeant, or staff sergeant, or whatever, such and such, and they say you, good luck with that. They're like, you? What is it? You is a sheep. Are you calling me a sheep? Like, what? Like, what are you doing? And it's not a good day. So, you don't make eye contact with them. You cannot look them in the eye. You have to look straight ahead. Bearing is a big thing. And that's, I think, where a lot of that comes from, where if you get caught looking at somebody or whatever, you eyes and, eyes to the front. That's it. You can't, even like in our extra PT sessions, like on the quarterdeck, or we call the pit. It's like the sandbox, a big thing of sand. And for, a little extra motivation, they'll put us in there, and the sand fleas are nasty. They will eat you up all day. Good luck getting scratching, because you're just going to be in there even longer. Like, I used to feel them bite me, and I could feel them chewing. And I had to stand there and take it and just let them feed. It sucked, but you couldn't move. Like, all right. Well,
and that's something, I think that's probably the last thing to mention, because I'm so glad we hadn't forgotten about all of these things, these other methods that are used, because I remember reading them thinking, oh my goodness. And The punishments you've mentioned, the sand pit. So is that literally just like a sand pit where you're expected to go and just like do like more exercising, more training?
Yeah, so it could be various things like side stroll hops, which would be like jumping jacks, mountain climbers, running in place with your arms out in front of you, sun gods, which are like you're moving your arms in circles. Push-ups, of course, was a popular one. I can't remember what else, but they just had you do what is that called? I forget, but just different things. And they would do it until they said they were tired, but if I remember correctly, they can only do that to you for so long because then it would be considered, I guess, abusive. So, whatever. It's like, okay, that's fine. This still sucks. Even if it is 10, 15, 20 minutes. Like, I don't care. This sucks. And it's always because somebody messed up, or maybe all of us did. Sometimes they did it when we were out doing our drill, close order drill with our M16s, and we're trying to get all these movements proper, and we just were having a bad day, so they would get all motivational with their cadence calling, and they'd send us right to the pit. We had to stack our stuff correctly, and we'd go right into the pit, and so everybody else would see us looking like fucking bag nasties. Like, oh man. And again, going back to what you were saying, like everybody knows, like, oh, they done messed up now because you're in the pit. Like, oh man, this sucks. It sucks because like I always got really upset because I feel like I let them down, and it wasn't necessarily me, it was all of us. But in certain cases they would take one person and be like, all right, you really need some help, we're gonna put you in the pit because you really pissed us off. I got one of those before. Whoops. It was really dumb.
It's funny though that you're able to recognize that sometimes you were that person, and everybody was probably looking at you like, D, no, stop.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was? So I really I almost felt like my mind kind of broke in that minute. So whenever a drill instructor or another Marine comes on deck, you would yell freeze. Drill instructor or Marine or whoever on deck, freeze. Everybody stops. And then they would say carry on, and you would say carry on, I ma'am, or ice, or whatever. And we already had a drill instructor on deck, so like there was no need for me to do what I did. So there's a drill instructor talking to us and another one came in, and I just blurted, freeze, drill instructor, blah 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 on deck, freeze. And the other drill instructor's looking at me like, have you lost your fucking mind? And mind you, she's like 5 foot, man. She was scary though. She was scary, and she got in my face, and she let me know like that was a really stupid thing, and I got quarter decked for that. I was like, well, whatever. It was stupid, but I mean, whatever. I didn't care. I mean, I did, but what do you do? I mean, it literally felt like my brain just broke, and I was just like, it just blurted out, and I was like, fuck, I'm screwed.
After you finished your basic training, after you graduated, what was life like for you, and where did the Marines take you next?
So after boot camp, I went to MCT. It's called Marine Combat Training. It's about 12 days. It's in Camp Lejeune. I believe it's at School of Infantry in North Carolina. And it's just more field training type of thing. You dig your fighting holes, and you do simulated war type things. You do land navigation, just various things like that. But it's a little bit more freedom. You don't have drill instructors up your butt, but you're still like really hot, like really tense, like, because you just think, you're still calling people ma'am and sir, and they're like, I have a rank, but we're like, we went through all this hell. Like, everybody's ma'am and sir, but it's still, tense, but it's not like crazy like boot camp. And we still had females, and the guys still had the males, but there was a lot more integration. And, it was a real kick in the gut because, again, if one person messes up, it makes us all look bad. And I remember specifically one night where we were in our huts. We slept in like these, I don't know, silo type things or whatever. Nothing real. When we were out in the field, like we actually had barracks, but at this time we were out in the field. And we were getting ready to, hit the rack, whatever time it was. And all of a sudden they all called us out to formation. And we were like, uh-oh, like we're in trouble. And basically what happened was our instructors had, I guess, a buddy of theirs, another Marine, was with them. I don't know if he was one of the other instructors, if he was a friend, whatever. And apparently had a conversation with another one of the MCT Marines, and it turned into like a very personal conversation, more of like a sexual thing, I guess. And they called us out and said, listen, you're females, like you already have a lot to prove because you're a female. And now, because a lot of the guys look down on us because we are females and they think we have it easy. Now you got this person here that's trying to hook up, like now we look like a bunch of sluts. Like, I hope you're happy. And I was just like, dude, like, what do I have to do with this, man? I'm just here to train. And like,
that's problematic in itself, isn't it? Even just saying like, now this is collectively, this is how you all look.
Yeah.
And to apply that word, because it was a two-way conversation, I'm assuming. And so where is the derogatory labeling of the other party involved?
That's it. It was, there was none. And it was like, test or not, like, it's one of the problems that I'd seen even like when I was in, once we get into, in Japan and being out into what you would call the fleet, like actually doing your job, and like, you were always under a microscope, and, the guys were so quick to just be so derogatory, with the nicknames. I mean, some of the nicknames we have, I don't know if they still use them. I don't see why they wouldn't, but whatever, is like WM. And a lot of people would say it's walking mattress or Wookie. So I had to look up why they called us Wookiees, which I've never been called one. And if I do, I will probably lose my shit. Basically what it turned in was was apparently at some point, and going back to hygiene in boot camp, a lot of us didn't shave, like, legs, armpits, whatever. And that's where the name came from. It was because at certain time, and maybe before my time or whatever, we weren't allowed to shave. When I was in, you were allowed to, but you had to sign out the razor. Again, going back to, making sure that people weren't doing, like, because suicide is definitely a thing that they talk about. Even our mouthwash was non-alcohol for probably people that drink. Razors had to be signed out. Like, there's so many different little things that we had to be mindful of. And, because they did, if somebody was having some mental issues, like they really wanted to, either fix it or get rid of it, because, that's a serious issue. So yeah, we had to sign out razors and whatever, but that's where the term Wookiee came from, was because we looked like Wookiees because we didn't shave. So I was like, whatever. And BAM is another one. I think that's an older term, means broad ass Marine. Like, just shit like that. So like, when somebody does something like that, it's just like, well, all those must be right, because look at this person here. Now we all look like that. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, I worked my ass off just like you did. We did all the same training. Nothing was different, minus our little flex arm hang. Like, we did the rifle range. We did the PFT. We did the swim qual. We did everything was the same. But because of one little divot like that, it's like, dude, That's crazy. That really, really hurt my feelings a lot. I was like, this sucks.
Do you feel like you really started to notice the difference between the two genders in these kind of in this 12-day program, like after basic training? What, once you start to integrate, you know, with the men and the women together, is this where you really started to realize that there was a massive divide?
I think the biggest thing I noticed was how many people tried hooking up, guys and girls. Like whether, someone approached them or the other approached the other. I'm like, I didn't notice really a divide till I got into the fleet, more or less. But like in a training environment, not so much. It was just people just getting their hormones under control, man. I was like, y'all need to chill. Like, we're Marines. Like, maybe I took it a little bit more literally than most, but I took it like, hey, I'm here to cause hell and return home in one piece, not, who can I screw in the field. Like, my priorities were much more different than others. But that was to me, that was a huge blow. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, are you kidding? So then, of course, word travels. I mean, holy cow, and it's just like, people are like, oh, I heard about this. And you're just like, well, dude, I didn't have nothing to do with it.
One, I think because imagine you're in this very insular environment, and sex is so restricted, or relations are so restricted or prohibited within that environment that it must heighten it for a lot of people. And when you're in those environments, if you see somebody that you're attracted to, it must heighten that so much more than it would, if you just passed them in a bar, or saw them occasionally in work. If you passed by one another, it must just make it and if that's reciprocated by the other party, I imagine it's quite difficult in those situations. And of course, temptation and the thrill of sneaking around, even though you're kind of being surveillanced or surveilled, I imagine adds another element to it as well. But of course, because of that going back to that oneness and that teamwork again, it's one action affects all. Although in this particular situation, it just seems to be the women that are affected or branded or labeled. But you mentioned something about Japan. So that kind of leads us nicely into the next section, because you do end up having your first post over in that part of the world.
Yeah. That's where the roller coaster really starts going. Yeah. So after MCT, you go to MOS school. MOS is military occupational specialty. That's the job that you either were assigned or that you signed up for when you joined the military. And then after MOS school, they give you the opportunity to pick where you want to go. It's not guaranteed, but you have the option, because it's always the needs of the Marine Corps. It's not what you want, it's what they want. And Okinawa was on the list, and I was like, well, I'm never going to have an opportunity to go there again. Let's go. Like, this is an awesome opportunity. This is going to be awesome. Like, this is going to be great.
Was this your first time out of the States?
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I live close to Canada, so like Canada doesn't count to me, because I could just drive over there. But like an actual overseas, like, yeah, I've never been anywhere. And it was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like, all right. And my first duty station was with 12th Marines, which is an artillery unit. And I was there from April 2001 to April 2002. And I was in the S1 division, which is the administrative, but I did most of my time in the mailroom. So I was like admin clerk, mail clerk. So I'd have to get the mail, sort it, and then stamp it, make sure that the orderlies from the other units would come get their mail, that they were legit able to pick up the mail for the whole, unit and whatever.
Mhm.
You know, this is where it really just goes in a crazy turn because, like, I got there, I just turned 19, and I was like, man, I'm here and I have no friends. Like, I have no, because I just got there and, like, I had no idea what to do. And I just got caught up with a bunch of enablers. And this is where the drinking really comes into play. And,
Yeah.
Because we're our units artillery, we had a lot of grunt units around us too. We had barracks behind us that were grunt unit. We had they would come in for 6 month deployments. You'd have grunt units and artillery units from the States, Hawaii, Lejeune, Pendleton, and it would do different whatever they were doing for 6 months, and then they'd rotate out and another unit would come in. So I found myself hanging out with a lot of grunts and a lot of artillery guys out in town. And again, like, I just, because I was a female, because I had, whatever, grunts for the most part, not all of them, I'm not speaking for all, but like there's a lot of them that really just thought there was no need for us. And they let me know. And, between alcohol and a short fuse temper, I was like, listen here, we're going to fucking fight. Like, I'm not going to let you walk over me because you think I shouldn't be here. Bitch, I got the same training you did. You went to school of infantry. I didn't. Okay. So I got into a lot of fist fights out in town with a lot of the grunts because they wanted to talk shit and, whatever. And I was like, I'm just not having it. And that's how I got my nickname. And, once you earn their respect, then they were cool. Like, and it's crazy because, like, we're like a big dysfunctional family. And I know, like, dysfunctional families because my family's dysfunctional. And what'll happen is you got two people or whatever that are in a squabble, but as soon as somebody else tries to intervene, now you're going to deal with both of us because this is between me and the other person, not you. This was not your business. And, but once we settled our differences, like, they had my back and I had theirs. Most of the time we would just settle it with a drink and we would just get drunk and, just have a good time. I think one of the worst things that I did, oh man, it was so stupid. Of course, I was in a bar, and my roommate was, I don't know what her deal was. She was saying something, and she was like, "Yeah, go after that guy right there. He was, talking shit or something. I don't know. I didn't know who he was." And I walked up to him and I was like, "Dude, you talking shit?" And I grabbed him by his throat. And he was like, what the fuck? And he grabbed me by mine. So we have each other by the throat, and he's walking me backwards. And he wound up like choke slamming me on the ground, like on the floor. And I tried to hit him, but I couldn't because I couldn't bring my arm back because I was on the floor. And you had about 4 or 5 guys that ripped him off of me, put him up against the wall and said, "Say the word." And I was like, "Dude, I fucking started it." And they're like, "What?" I was like, "I fucking started it." They're like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "I'm fucking crazy." Like, like I did it. And if I would have not said anything, they probably would have beat the shit out of him. And because, he put his hands on me because I'm a female, but I was like, I'm a Marine. Like, to me, there shouldn't be a gender attached to it. You're a Marine, you're a Marine. But
interesting that though in itself, because you say that, the women are, the men believe that the women are treated differently, that they have it easier. But then, you leave 2 men to fight one another, that's fine. But as soon as a woman is assaulted by a man, it's a different story. The men are then there to, so it's kind of like mixed signals in that sense, isn't it? It's like, the women have it easier. So does that mean that they're weaker, that they can't defend themselves and that they need men to come to their aid? Or should it be that if the women have it harder, they need to learn how to defend themselves without the support of the men who already think that they are less than, or like a subspecies, like a subhuman species. Like, so it's kind of weird to try and work out, you know, why it is that it exists that way. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody like that, but there were plenty out there that definitely did, and was like, all right, well, I gotta earn that respect. I gotta, whatever. And a lot of it, I think, like when it comes to cadences, like when we would run, we would yell cadences to kind of motivate us and stuff. And a lot of guys thought it was kind of shitty that they couldn't do like stuff that was explicit or could be like, I guess, offensive, around us because we might be offended. And I was like, I'm not one of those people. Like, don't put me in that group. Like, if you want to say something, say something. Like, I don't care. But again, it's all as one. You can have a platoon full of guys and there's one female. Now, we have to be PC. It's like, whatever. So I can understand frustration, but I don't think you should take it out on everybody either.
No. You mentioned that whilst you were over in Japan, you had quite a number of the drinking was a big theme that came through, something that you really took to an extreme whilst you were over in Japan. Some of that you said you put down to obviously perhaps something hereditary which you have received from your father and his side of the family, but also a lot to do with the homesickness, a lot to do with trying to show that, to gain the respect of the male grunts and other people. So there was a number of different factors that contributed to you drinking so much during your time in Japan, but you did have a couple of positive life-changing experiences whilst you were over in Japan, and I wondered if you could just talk us through a couple of those things that happened.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we some of the part of the unit had went over to mainland Japan to Camp Fuji. And that was awesome. I mean, we got to climb Mount Fuji and we did some live fire stuff or whatever. And one of the things that was really cool was we had the opportunity, a handful of us, to go to an orphanage and just spend the day with the kids and just color and draw and whatever they wanted to do. Like, whatever. They're all local. So like there was a little bit of a language barrier because we, some of us didn't speak or know Japanese very well. So, but the people that were in charge did. So, when we would try to communicate, we would kind of talk to them so that they can translate for us to them. And, it was heartbreaking at the same time. Cause you're like, man, these kids, like, you just wish they had a better start to life, but who knows why they were there, but it was still very sad, very nice kids. And one of the things that, one of the kids did was they made a samurai hat out of newspaper. So freaking cool. Still have it, still in really good condition considering its age. And
I'll post a picture with the when I release the social media posts highlighting the episode, because that was a really great picture to receive.
Oh yeah, it was so cool. And to just, whether we made a difference or not in those kids' lives, it was just an awesome time. And we did some volunteering at a couple of the elementary schools on the base, on one of the bases. So like we tried to get out there and do the, good deed type of thing. And one of the things that I did learn about, growing up was making sure that you donate your time, even if it's not money, just donate, because there's somebody else who's going to have it worse than you. And I didn't have it great growing up, but I worked for everything that I had and have. And that was one thing I learned even growing up, even before going in the military. You have to earn everything. Somebody's not going to give that to you. And, but at the same time, like, we had it hard. So giving back any way that I can and trying to make a difference to somebody, like, was always big to me. Regardless of the hand that I was dealt, it shouldn't reflect on somebody else. Like, they don't have a good hand. It's not the same hand as me, but it doesn't matter. What can I do to help you? Like, as bitter as it may seem that I'm really not like I was, but like, I really am empathetic to people, like, especially if I've been through similar things to other people. Like, I want that ear. I want to lend that ear, because that might be the difference between, talking it out or just saying hi to a stranger on the street. Like, that could be the difference between having a good day and an awful day. Like, it's just the little things. And like, so just doing volunteering like that, like, it was just so cool. So like, getting that hat, like, was just so freaking awesome that they appreciated me that much, that they were like, here, have this. And it was just like, I never let anything happen to it. So
it's interesting what you said about just regardless of the hand that you were dealt, because there was a tweet that was going around the other day about how Biden is considering forgiving a load of student debt that people have at the moment. And somebody tweeted something like, I worked so many hours nonstop for this amount of time to pay off my student debt. So if Biden forgives all of this other debt, like, I'm going to be really angry. And somebody retweeted it like, okay, so because you suffered, everyone else has to suffer.
Right.
And that's like, it's like, just because you had a difficult childhood, it doesn't mean that you want everybody else to have a difficult childhood.
Right.
And you had so much experience looking after children growing up that you were probably quite adept at just falling back into that role of working out the best ways to support the less fortunate in the position that you were in. And I just think that's great. And then obviously you got to go and do something else in Japan that not many people can say they've done, which I thought was amazing when I read in your emails.
Yeah, the climbing Mount Fuji. I mean, people pay to do that. They travel, and I got to do it. They paid me. Like, I got to do that. And it was just like, man, like, this is awesome. Like, this is great. And we did jungle warfare training, and I got to rappel, and I'm terrified of heights. But like, when am I gonna do this again? Like, I rappelled down a 65-foot wall. Like, holy cow, like, just all these different things, these training things, just all these experiences traveling. I never got to do that as a civilian. And I don't know if I ever will be able to, like, travel, not necessarily the training part, but travel as a civilian, and it's just like, man, this is just so surreal. And you really have to take it in and just think about it and be like, wow, like, this is awesome. Like, this is great.
And these are the other parts of the high demand organization that I think should be highlighted, just referring back to the comments that the individual said about us covering the armed forces. There's always other parts to consider, and this is definitely one of them. The experiences that people are able to have, the culture that people are able to experience, through being involved in the armed forces. And I don't know how tall Mount Fuji is, but it sounds like quite an achievement to get to the top.
Yeah, it's I don't even know what the kilometers is, but once you get there, there's like a little shrine. It's nothing crazy, it's just a little shrine up there, and like, hey, you got there. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, you climbed up this, it's actually a volcano, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's an active volcano.
Yeah. So, it was just like, all right, cool. Still got the walking stick. that they give you to kind of help you up there, because it gets steep, like to the point where you're like looking at the side, like you're going whoop, and you're just like, wow. Yeah, maybe I do need a little help. I don't know. But yeah, it's
It's 100 kilometers.
Okay.
And that is, I mean, how long did that take you? That's wild.
Oh, I don't know. It definitely, back then I was in shape, so I mean, it wasn't like a quick thing, but it definitely, I know hours were involved. That's for sure. I honestly can't remember. I might have been hungover for all I know. I drank a lot there too. So, but yeah, that was considered our platoon PT session. So like every Wednesday, was it Wednesday and Friday? Or was it just Wednesdays? We would have our platoon PT, because every day you would have it with your unit. So you get up, you do a run or whatever activity you're doing. So this was the whole group. This was the unit that was there. We all went up. Not everybody made it, which is fine, like whatever. But, if you did, you did. And if you didn't, then you didn't. But you still got up there.
Well, I'm just looking here at the differences between different mountains and peaks, because the highest thing I've ever climbed is a peak in Scotland called Ben Nevis. And that was like we did it in a day, but I've never climbed a mountain. It's the only mountain I've ever climbed, and it was horrendous. It was so tough. But this is ridiculous. So Ben Nevis is 1,344 meters. And Mount Fuji is 3,776. So that's like two and a bit. Probably like 2.5.
I don't know where it starts that we started the climb, because we had to take a bus up there all the way up to wherever the base was.
Okay.
And so it wasn't like all the way from the bottom all the way up to the top. It was at a certain point. And I didn't look out the window, because I was like, all I see is clouds. And it was a narrow road. And I thought, man, please don't die. Like, don't go off the road. But there's a base, and I don't know how high the base is from the top, but it definitely wasn't like from the base all the way up. It was a certain point, and then you go up.
That's still so high, though. It's wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just interesting to compare the two. Sometimes it's hard for me to have a reference, or to, I think sometimes to understand like the significance of you climbing Mount Fuji. It's like, what can I compare it to in my own experience to understand like what that achievement actually means? So my comparing it to Ben Nevis is like, it's pretty significant, which is amazing. But as you said, you're continuing to drink at this point.
Yeah.
And it starts to become like more of a defining thing in your life. Kind of the marine side of things gets pushed to the side, and the alcohol becomes kind of more center focus, would you say?
I was functional. I was a functional drunk. I mean, I still was able to get what I had to get done. I was still a hard worker, but man, I partied so much harder. And I mean, I would show up, all the time drunk, and you could smell it. I mean, you weren't allowed to have, so there's rules in the barracks. You're not supposed to have like beer, or if you're, I think 21 or older, or a certain rank or whatever, you could have like a 6-pack or something. You weren't allowed to have liquor, if I remember correctly, but somehow like, I always wound up with it. And, you could sneak it in. People didn't check, like, they didn't check your rooms or anything. So I wound up with Jack Daniels all the time, Wild Turkey, any kind of whiskey you could think of, Jägermeister, tequila. Like, I used to pride on myself on being an out drink anybody under the table. I don't know what kind of award you get for that, other than cirrhosis or something of the liver, but yeah, it came to a head in New Year's of 2002 So when we get like a holiday like Memorial Day or New Year's or Christmas or something, you either have like a what's called a 72, which is 72 hours of liberty, where you can kind of do whatever, and you just have to report back, such and such time, for to resume, your duties. Or you have a 96, which is 4 days, 96 hours of liberty. And I think for New Year's it was a 96, I think. And a lot of the stuff, like, it was just reasons for me to drink. Like, I just came up with shit. Like, yeah, it was tough being over there. And if I would have made better decisions, if I would have hung out with a better crowd, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. I would have seen the island. I would have seen more of the culture. I love Okinawans. They are some of the nicest, most honest people I've ever met. They're great people, and I wish I would have learned the language and all that, but I didn't. Um, but I had two big bottles of Jack Daniels, and I drank one on Friday all by myself, one sitting, Jack and Coke all day long. And then Saturday, I recovered. Sunday, or it was whatever, no, it was the day before. So if it was a 96, it would have been Saturday, Sunday, then Monday, I would have drank into coming back. So whatever it was. And so the next day I took off. The next day I had another bottle of Jack Daniels, same size, same everything, drank it. And I didn't wake up in time for duty, or, decide to go back to work. And they had to get me out of bed at like 9:30 in the morning. And I knew I was fucked at that point. And I got NJP'd, non-judicial punishment. I had to go in front of my what was he? The regimental CO. No, battery CO. It was a captain. And I was restricted to my barracks. I had to do like additional duties. I don't remember how much money they took from me, but they suspended my reduction in rank for 6 months, which meant if I kept my nose clean for 6 months, I wouldn't lose my rank. Because at the time I was a PFC, maybe Lance Corporal, I don't remember. And I had to go to alcohol counseling, which was on another base. So I got in trouble. Got a little. To me, that was a slap on the wrist.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stay in my room all the time. I had to go to the duty across the base and do, extra cleanup stuff, like extra duties and whatnot. And I was, a little bit more broke because they took out, whatever they took from me. And I still didn't learn, but whatever. At the time I was defiant. I was going to alcohol counseling, and they're like, well, you're an alcoholic. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I can stop whenever I want. That's always the line. I can stop whenever I want. Well, they're like, when's the last time you drank? Or what's the longest amount of time you went without a drink? And I was like, a month, maybe 2. And they're like, are you proud of that? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you don't see that there's a problem here? And I'm like, no. Like, I was very defiant. And I was like, my dad is an alcoholic. Like, I'm not him. And I think a lot of it was just denial, but a lot of it was, I'm a jerk off 19-year-old. And you can't tell me what I am. Like, I know who I am. You can't tell me that. And I did get through it, and I mean, I still drank. I didn't do it nearly as much. Like, I really did keep my nose clean, but it wasn't like I didn't drink on the weekend still. Like, there's another guy, another Marine in my unit, who also got in trouble, but he was of age, and it wasn't like, I don't think it was even near the same situation, because I did get in trouble for underage drinking as well. I was 19. I forgot to throw that in there. It was underage drinking, unauthorized absence, and maybe it was just that, maybe something else that I got in trouble for. And so what would happen is me and him would go to the same, I think it's called Sacco or something. It was some kind of alcohol thing. And basically what we would do is we take the bus to another base, go to our counseling. We take the bus back to our base. He would go buy some beer and we would drink together after. I was just like,
and talk about everything that happened in the meeting before.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was just like, I laugh about it now because I don't know how else to deal with it. It was stupid. Like, now I get it. But then I was just like, F the system. Like, I work my ass off. And like, I mean, how effective was I? I mean, I guess I was effective because I was, but it's like, I think about it rationally now and I'm like, man, I must have been a real piece of shit back then. Like, going in smelling like a bottle of booze every day. Like, holy crap. I remember going on like a 2-week, 3-week binge and I couldn't eat for like 2 or 3 days, man, because I was so sick. It was nothing but booze, 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 booze. And it was just like, there'd be days where I'd wake up and I'm like, what are you doing? And we're not even talking about like all the other stuff that I did, like I was, the promiscuity was off the charts. Like, I was like, man, just like, and it's going to sound funny when I say it, but it was like, to me, it was just filling a void, quote unquote. Like I had an emptiness. And if it wasn't the booze, it was sleeping with another Marine, which, was like, whatever. And
that was something that when you first joined the Marines and you were all starry-eyed and motivated and then super dedicated and following all of the rules and everything, that was something that you weren't interested in. And kind of as you got more involved and as things started to change, you started to change as well and started to become interested in pursuing sexual relations. But something that you emailed me that was the most interesting well, not the most interesting, but one of the things that really stood out was that like you had your first sexual encounter in the Marines. And you just kind of did it to get it over with because you were just like, I just want to get it over with. And I thought that was so interesting because I feel like that's the story for a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to do this now to just get it over with. It's not something I want to do. This is not the person I want to do it with. I'm just going to do it so that it's done. And I thought that was kind of, and then, as you said, you were quite promiscuous and you were getting involved with other people within the Marines, which you weren't allowed to be doing, but you weren't allowed to be drinking either. You just kind of at this point thrown caution to the wind and just sort of just as you said, you were just
I lost all my inhibitions. I didn't date when I was in school. I didn't have anything. I never dated. I never had boyfriend, girlfriend, nothing, like none of it, and because dating was really just not a thing, just because you'd always, hear about my sisters and how they get pregnant and they're running around with these guys. And I was just like, I'm not even interested. I just want to play football. And then of course with school and being picked on, and I didn't have friends really, maybe 2. And like, I just never connected with me. So like, it was never a thing. But then once I went overseas and I was drinking and I was around guys all the time, and I was just like, man, like, I just can't, I got to get it over with. Like, I don't even care about this guy. Like, he's nice. He's cool. Like, we're buddies. So he was a buddy fucker. And that was it. Like, and it was done. And I was just like, well, this sucks. Like, is that it? Like, it was like the most, like, just blah. Like,
underwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a lot left to be desired. And I was just like, oh man, this is it. Like, and one of the later when I was there, a little longer, and I befriended a lot more people, and we were having a conversation, and he was like, everybody thought like, you were, you're a lesbian, and I was like, well, not that matters, but like, I don't care what anybody thinks, but like, why? And they're like, because you weren't interested in anybody. And I was just like, so basically what you're saying is if a female Marine's not having sex with another person, like another guy, like a Marine or whatever, they're
You must be gay.
sexual, right? And if they are, then we're just sluts. And he was like, well, yeah. I was like, well, that's fucked up, dude. So like, what are you guys? Like, you're out there, sexing it up too, and you guys are the fucking man. Like, I'm doing the same thing that you are doing, and I'm a slut, and you're the man. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm using you just like you're using me. Like, what's the problem? Like, why am I that? But like, as far as I know, like, even though I was doing my dirt, like, nobody was shitty with me.
It reminds me of that Christina Aguilera song. I don't know if
Mhm.
you're familiar with her song. It was one of her older songs. I'm just singing it in my head right now to get to the chorus. Oh yeah, it's like "Can't Hold Us Down" or something like that. And she's
Okay.
basically just saying all of the things in that song that you have just said.
Yeah, where's this double standard? Like,
Yeah.
because the guys, like, that's the thing. Like, once I was cool with the guys, I was treated like one of the guys. So, like, even though I was out doing my thing, like, nobody was shitty with me. Nobody was disrespectful to me. And if they were, like I said, it was probably behind my back. Like, I don't really care. Like, if you got something to say, just fucking say it to me, and we'll act like men. We'll fight it out, and we'll have a drink. And that's like one of the reasons why I don't get along with females anyway. I don't like females. Like, not obviously like you, but like in general, because I find them to be catty. I find them to be manipulative, which is something we'll get into later. But like, which is weird because I'm a female. Like, but I don't act like that. Like, I'm more masculine in my personality and the way I handle things. If you want to go, we'll just fucking fight it out, and then we're done. There is no bringing it up later. There is no cattiness. There's no nothing. Like, we're gonna settle it like men. That's how I've always looked at it, and I still do. Like, my temper is nothing like it used to be. So like, I'm not trying to fight nobody. I'm trying not to go to jail. Like, in the military is a lot different than in the civilian sector. But like, you got a problem, take it to me. Like, we could figure it out. But like, all this behind the back stuff, like, take that shit somewhere else. But like, when you hang around the guys like that, you start talking like they do. And I found myself starting to talk down towards a lot of the females, but a lot of them were kind of like skeevy. And a lot of it is down to what they wear in their civilian attire. Like, some of them dress kind of slutty. And like, that doesn't mean that they are. But like, you're supposed to dress a certain way. Like, we had to make sure we had a belt on. We had to wear a belt. We had to tuck our shirts in. Like, we had to, just be, we're representing the Marine Corps, even when we're not in our uniform, so like, I don't like wearing female clothes anyway. So like, I'm just like, ugh, what is she wearing?
So after your stint in Japan, you head over to Virginia.
Yes.
And this is kind of your last hurrah within the Marines before you go back to typical life outside of the Marine Corps and try to readjust to everyday life. So what does your time in Virginia look like?
I hated it. It was such a different atmosphere. It was like day and night, where being over in Japan, like in my unit, everybody was, even if you messed up, they took care of it in-house. So like, people didn't know your dirt or whatever. Where in Virginia, it seemed like it was there's a lot more politics involved. They wanted to make people set an example out of you. I've seen, NCOs, your corporal sergeants, even some staff sergeants get treated like shit. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, there's a lot of, what do they call it? Dog and pony shows out there. Like, a lot of formations, a lot of retirements, just a lot of like selfishness, I felt like. And I just hated it. And then on top of that, again, with the don't ask, don't tell, that's really what plays a part here. Is there was somebody in my unit, we'll call her Jane. This is where Jane comes into the picture. And she, from what I was told, she was on like leave of some sorts or whatever. They told me to stay away from her. She's bad news. And I'm like, well, now I got to find out who this is. She was getting kicked out because she was she got busted with another girl, not just another girl, but like it was an officer's daughter. So that's a big oops. And so, they started the process of, getting her kicked out. Like there was I think it's like a general court martial or something. I forget how it goes, but there's a whole different process that goes with that. And she wound up, I don't know, with a bunch of things. And I was just like, okay, like whatever. But when I met her, she was just very upfront, very direct, very, hey, this is me, this is my deal. And if you don't like it, cool. Like, we'll just, that's it. And I was like, hey, like, that's cool. Like, you're pretty upfront, pretty direct. Like, I dig it. Like, I don't need a roundabout. Man, I should have run. I should have run. Worst thing ever. So manipulative. We hung out, and we were cool. And I eventually found myself like being attracted to her, like, and I was just like, that's cool. Like, but I just never acted on any of this stuff. Cause at this point I was like, no, you're getting kicked out and I don't need to be dragged down in that stuff. And then we had, somebody else join at some point, Janet, who joined in, and she was fresh out of boot camp. This was her first duty station. And I liked her too. And I was like, hey, you're pretty cool. But those two wound up getting together. But we all hung out as one little triangle of happiness. And so we always used to do stuff together. Off base, on base. We'd go to DC. We'd go wherever, just whatever people do. And like people were just like, are y'all together? Like all three of you? And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what? No. Like, of course not. And so then I did what I did. I call it survival mode. And I found myself another male Marine and we started dating. And I only did it just for the sake of people thinking I was straight. Because if you're dating a guy, you can't be anything else, right? Bisexuality clearly doesn't exist. So we dated, and then that whole stigma kind of shoved off for me. But the nail in the coffin for those two, let me go back. I'm sorry. So let's go back a little bit before we enter the exit in the third person. There we were roommates, me and Janet, and there was a little friction between us because whenever Jane would get mad at her, she would come to me and we would, mess around and do stuff. And it was just like, she was just leading me along. Like, we're going to be in a relationship. She's just here just to be here. When I get out, like, we'll be a thing. And I don't know why I was so dumb to like believe all her crap, but whatever. Anyway, they were in our room. They were sitting on the bed. I started drinking probably about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. There was beer in my fridge. I don't know how the hell it got there because it wasn't mine. But I drank whatever was in there. And probably by midday, man, I was pretty sauced. And something happened where Janet pissed me off. I drank my beer. I went to the bathroom. I smashed it on the bathroom sink. I came out and I said, I'm going to cut your fucking throat. And they ran. They were gone. And I was just standing there with a broken bottle, like, fuck, man. I would have done it. Like, 'cause I remember people asking me, like, would you have done it? And I said, yeah, I would have gutted her.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous. And yeah, pretty wild, pretty crazy. And they did tell our command, and that actually got me sent to rehab. And it was, and it was crazy. I was a hard worker, like, but again, just because I'm a hard worker doesn't mean I have flaws, right? So like, they, instead of wanting to kick me out because I already had an alcohol related incident, they could have easily just kicked me out. But I don't know if it was like pity because I was just in this stupid situation doing stupid stuff with stupid people, or if they really thought, you know what, man, she's just really effed up and she needs help. And so I went to rehab, and, that's when I really had to face my demons. I had to face the hate that I had for myself. I hated myself for some of the things that I just didn't act on as a kid. I've seen domestic violence in front of me. A very close family member got beat by her boyfriend in front of me, and I did nothing but scream. And like, I just hated myself for that. I hated myself for, just so many different things. And like, we've had conversations, me and this person, and I was like, I felt awful. And they were like, why? Like, if you would have intervened, you would have got your ass kicked too. And I was like, well, I would rather have it been me than you. Like, like, I always wanted to be the hero. And ever since I was a little girl, like, going back, and I don't know what it was that was in me that was like, I just need to protect people. And I never even considered it like joining in the Marine Corps, because I was just like, I need discipline. I need direction. And, and it was just that hero aspect of me where I was like, I gotta protect. And if I didn't, then I failed miserably. And it was just like, I was always still am very hard on myself. But that was like the breaking point where I was like, I'm not worth anything. I'm not worth happiness. Like, I really thought I was going to die alone. I thought all these different things. And I had to deal with these feelings in rehab, which sucked. Like, I was sober. I had to stay sober, and I had to write things out. I had to write a letter. I wish I still had it, but I think I tossed it because it just was too much. I had to write a letter and about like just letting your feelings out of a certain, like, whatever. And I wrote this letter to my grandfather. I mean, he was obviously deceased, but I wrote this letter and just poured everything out. And when I read it, like, everybody was crying. Like, so I was just like, I'm so angry that, I wasn't able to tell you what I've done. I was so angry because of this and that. And it wasn't his fault. It was just, I never got to make you proud of me. I never got, you never got to see me do this, or it was just all these things. And at the end of the day, like, it was just all these feelings I had just built up, and I had to write it and just, read it and let it out. And it was awesome. Like, being in there was just amazing. And the only thing I would have ever changed was not going back to the same toxic people after I got out. But, I mean, I really stopped a lot with the drinking. It didn't stop me completely, but I really was like, whoa. And I mean, obviously when you threaten somebody's life and health, from being drunk and all that other stuff, you're just kind of like, yeah, something real bad's going to happen if you keep doing this. And going back to Japan, the doctor that saw me was like, did you have alcohol poisoning? I was like, no, man, like, I've been doing this shit for a long time. And he was like, because like somebody your size, your age, like, should have been in the hospital. He was like, if you keep doing this, you're going to be dead by 30. Now you're telling somebody that's 19 years old, they're going to be dead by 30. You're like, fuck, I don't care. That's old. Now I'm like, listen, I'm 40, like, chill. But like, I was just like, okay, that's nice. And, you're just like, dude, like, this is crazy. And, bringing all that stuff back up in rehab, you're just like, man. And that's when I first said, like, my name is Dee and I'm an alcoholic. Like, and that was it. Like, I had to own it. I did own it. I let go of all the, the denial. They say denial's not just a river in Egypt. It means don't even know I'm lying. So, it's just a lot of things like that. And, the whole pour me a drink aspect. Cause, there's a lot of that where I was like, oh, I feel so bad for myself. Oh, woe is me. I'm going to drink, So all these different little things where they're just like, you gotta have a sponsor. You gotta do this. You gotta do that. And, it was just like, yeah, I was going to AA meetings and, I was really good about doing stuff like that. And, once I got back with those fucking knuckleheads, man, it was like, what the hell? And then not far after that, they, I don't even know why, but good riddance to the both of them. they decided that they were going to go to somebody else's barracks room, and somebody was going to record this, that they had intercourse in this room with, there's like 4 of us in there watching. And who didn't think that guys don't kiss and tell, right? Quote unquote. And the video got out and they both got kicked out. Well, the one was already on her way out anyway, but the other one got sucked in. So Janet was on her way out to get booted. And there really wasn't any proof that they needed because it was right there in the video. And I was just like, why I was there, I don't even know why I bothered to show up. My name was brought up during that video. They said, hey, where's Dee? While they were doing this. And I was like, I don't know if she was trying to systematically ruin me. Because even when I was in rehab, I called my sister, and because she was like, if you don't tell her that you're lesbian, like, I'm going to leave you and I hate you and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh, this is so awful. So I had to come out to my sister, and she was like, what took you so long? Like, everybody else seemed to know that, like, I had this, thing for women, but like everybody else knew. Like, I don't know, it was really weird. But I was just like, okay, so now, like, I don't know if she was trying to destroy the relationship I had with my sister doing that. Like, thinking about it now, I was just like, it comes out later that she was diagnosed with bipolar. And like, thinking about it now, thinking about all these things, it made sense just looking into bipolar disorder and all this. And I was just like, oh, well, wow, that's, yeah. Like, okay.
Some of the things that when you were telling me that story through email, it felt a lot like some of the stories we've heard from people who have been involved in the troubled teen industry, and how you go to these very isolated programs away from everything. And and because there's this environment that exists where, with the surveillance and the self-policing and the public shaming, and obviously you have mentioned the don't ask, don't tell mentality at that time, and how same-sex relationships were prohibited, as well as, all relationships. But I mean, if you identified as a member of that community, you would be kicked out. So what I was thinking was, in these environments, the smallest things are exacerbated into something that might not be seen as much of a big deal in the regular or the outside world, or in civilian life, as you would say it, using your Marine terminology. Yeah. So because of the environment itself, it's almost as if these interactions that you've had with Jane and Janet might not have been half as severe as they were had it have occurred outside. Right. Do you feel like that's the case? Even talking about drinking in the bars in Japan, you would get into like fisticuffs with people over nothing. Do you feel like it's that type of environment that allows those things to happen?
I mean, it's possible, like, when you know that you're quote unquote doing something wrong, which obviously 2 women having a relationship is not wrong. But when you're in the Marine Corps and there's don't ask, don't tell, it's wrong, because then you'll get kicked out. So like, having that relationship aspect, even as friends, but just hanging out with 2 people that everyone knows are lesbians, and you get dragged into that, and all these things. And when we go out to DC, like, we've been to Pride in DC or Fredericksburg or wherever we go, like, nobody knows. We're all civilians, like, nobody notices. And so when we're doing quote unquote something wrong, it's just like, you have to hide it, and it's just shit that you have to do that. So there's like, this part that's like, man, that's crappy that you have to hide who you are to be what you want to be. And even like, so like being in the military, like once you're in the fleet, you can have a relationship with another Marine as long as the ranks sync with each other. Like you can't, if you're E1 through E3, you're fine. But I don't know if a non-rate could date an NCO.
Well, that's ridiculous. That sounds
But
like the caste system that they have in India,
yeah,
where people
you
from
can't.
certain
I mean,
classes can't marry another, like from a different class. That's one.
yeah, we had, if you're enlisted, you can't marry an officer. Well, you're not supposed, whatever. And like, there's a lot of regulations on stuff like that where you're just like, what? Okay, like it's, that's kind of shitty. But yeah, it's just when you have to hide stuff like that, I feel like it boils more of a resentment and more internal anger and hate to do all those things. And again, with me drinking and the boiling pot of hot water, and it just, it doesn't take much.
I suppose there's been some examples where people would say that in some of the wilderness programs where they would sit down to do their group sessions, group therapy, RAP sessions, the various different terminologies that are used around these programs, somebody would say, so-and-so had an extra slice of toast with breakfast. And that would be like the theme for the whole, and it would be such a massive deal. So I feel like this situation with Jane and Janet, this whole like she says situation that you were involved in, that just led to this wild thing where you threatened to slice someone's throat open with a broken bottle. I just don't know if you would have reached just such a crescendo had this been outside of that particular environment.
Yeah, no, I agree. And even this little stuff, like people would snitch on you for stupid shit, just little things, and you're just like,
but it seems like a big deal when you're there.
Like, obviously with big things like what I did, or obviously in the Marine per the military, what they were doing was a big deal. But everybody wants to look better than the other. So I get what you're saying, because they're just like, oh, if you're a rat, if you're a snitch, as I call it, I have a street mind mentality a little bit with that. But it's like stupid booger stuff, man. You're just like, why do you fucking tell on somebody for that? Like, what is wrong with you? Because you want to look better than I do? Like, you want to get promoted? Like, that's cool. Like, but don't be a bitch about it, dude. Like, excuse my language, but it's just like, why you gotta rat on people? How about doing it through actions? How about being a better Marine? How about being a better leader instead of trying to do it the nitpicky way? Like, that's so stupid. But that's me. Like,
what does your exit out of the Marines look like, and your reintegration into civilian life look like?
It's tough. Before you get out, they have what's called TAPS class. I can't remember what that means either. I should remember acronyms, but I don't. And it's like a week long, I think. And it kind of prepares you for, life after the military, like what to expect, what kind of jobs or what kind of resources when you get out and all this other stuff. So I did that. I got out. I moved down south to Florida with my sister, and I did not acclimate well at all. I was so lost. I had no idea what I was doing in life. I was like, I need a job. I need to get money, support myself, keep it moving. So I got a job as doing like security work. I worked like 6 days a week, and I had the way I talked to people. I don't even know how I stayed employed because I was vile. I remember working at overnights at like a apartment complex where a lot of college people stay, because it was by a university in Tampa. And I remember training somebody to do this same section, and they all told him like, she's a bitch. I was like, yeah, I am. But like, I'm not here to be your friend. But the way that I would interact with some people was very condescending, and there may have been some choice, swear words and stuff. Because like, I'm thinking, man, I'm still in the military, and it's like, no, that's not it. And then I wound up getting a job at a apartment complex, working for them, doing the night thing and just busting people's chops all day long. And I remember specifically I got in trouble for this. There were two people, it was late at night. They were outside the door to the building where their apartment is. And they're like groping and making out and stuff. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that's exactly what I said. That's nasty. Like, there's people that live here, there's kids and stuff. Like, take that shit inside. And I got in trouble for that. And I was like, whatever. But, I did that. I made it in through into leasing management. And a lot of people didn't want to deal with me because they knew I was so vile. Yeah. Security thing. They were like, I don't want to talk to you. I was like, all right, well, I mean, if you want an apartment, if you need help, like, I'm the person to do it. So I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry.
I mean, I had leveled out by then. Like, it was just a different hat that I had to put on, and so just dealing with that. There was still some alcohol consumption, but not a lot. But again, still drinking, like, get a clue. And then we wound up moving back to New York back in late 2007, just shy of 2008. And that's when my life really took a turn. And that's where I was 26 years old and I was going to the VA hospital for various things. I don't even remember what. And they were like, hey, you're losing a lot of weight. And what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, like different activities on the weekends. I'm eating whatever I want. I'm not gaining any weight. So they're like, we need to do your yearly.
Sometimes you need to take control to make a difference. That's why with FlexPath from Capella University, you're in control. Set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move at a pace that works for you. Discover a different way forward at capella.edu.
Dad is the smartest guy you know, so give him a gift that's just as smart. Like a battery-powered smart doorbell from Google Nest that lets him see what's happening at his door and answer it from anywhere. The Google Nest doorbell is now on special buy for only $129.99 and works on any home. Find the best and smartest gifts for Dad. Feels like Father's Day at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Offer valid through June 19th, 2022 at participating U.S. stores and online. Limit 5 per customer.
It's like, okay. And it started with, I don't know how graphic, I don't know. But they said they were doing an internal and they moved my uterus was moved over, like pushed over. And they're like, that's kind of weird, but it's not unusual, but it's like something's not right. So let's do some testing. So they did a bunch of testing. They did like ultrasounds, blood work, which is the key here. And they called me back the next day and said, we need you to come in like right now.
Wow.
And I was like,
oh my goodness. So you couldn't tell that things had shifted around. Wow.
No, but it's funny because like I was getting a lot of sharp, crampy pains. I was getting my period twice a month, back issues, UTIs, which I'm saying these things because these are actually some side effects of what would have been ovarian cancer, which is what I had, stage 2 ovarian cancer at 26 years old. And I'll tell you the one thing that did it. So we have what's called a CA-125, cancer antigen 125. And it's to tell if there's like ovarian or uterine cancers in the body. It's a good indicator. And a normal number should be between 0 and like, I think it's like 15 or 20. Mine was over 700.
Oh my goodness.
So I was just like, oh, well, winner, chicken dinner. So I went to a very well-known cancer hospital and I had to get surgery pretty much right away because they were like, well, there's a tumor. Found out the reason my uterus was pushed over was I had a tumor the size of a grapefruit attached to it, and it was touching my colon. They told me I had to sign a piece of paper because there's a possibility that if this is attached to my colon, I was going to need a colostomy bag. They're going to have to take part of my colon out. And my dad lost it because he was with me when I had to go talk to the doctor. So I had to have had a full hysterectomy, had to recover. I didn't find out that I actually had cancer until the beginning of 2009. I was having some issues in the healing process. I thought I had an infection. They took my blood. My white blood cells were up, but I had zero infection. And they said, we need to talk after Christmas, after the holidays. And I knew by then that I had it. And, you don't realize how much of a kick in the face it is
Gosh,
until
Dee.
you sit there and tell you, hey, you have cancer. And I remember everything around me went black. Like I was in a tunnel.
Oh.
My eyes watered. And the first thing I asked was, am I going to die? And they're like, no, like you're going to be okay, but you got to have chemo and it's non-aggressive. And, you got it, everything squared away in time. And the crazy thing is it wasn't even the tumor on my uterus that was cancerous. There were two small cysts they thought were cysts on my ovaries that had the cancer. I'm like, go figure. So that was a whole nother thing. And the whole military thing, though, everything's a mission. Like everybody's like really upset, crying. And I'm like, let's go. Let's get this over with, get it done, keep it moving. Mm-hmm. Mentally, I was a wreck. Going through menopause at 26 is awful.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even consider that. Of course, if you have a hysterectomy, yeah. Oh my goodness.
I still have to take hormone therapy to lumpy. So I've been taking hormone therapy since I was 26. I hot flashes, cold flashes, getting my hormones balanced. I contemplated suicide a lot of times. I would wake up in the middle of the night crying and calling, family members or friends going, listen, I can't, I just sitting here talking to you is stopping me from going in the middle of the street and just laying there and hoping somebody runs me over.
Oh my goodness.
And it was awful, but I had a fantastic support group. So I made it through, and it was just like, okay. And, that's when I really had to grab sobriety by the balls and say, listen, a lot of the stuff I was mad about, a lot of stuff that I was holding rage about, it was gone. Like I felt like my life was literally, in my opinion, was in God's hands. And like, that's what brought me back towards religion. Like I'm probably the most non-Christian Christian ever. Like, I don't care what people believe in and don't believe in. My fiance is fucking agnostic. Like we respect each other. And that's what the problem is. People don't respect each other. So like, whatever someone chooses to believe in or not, like whatever, but I'm not going to get too but like, just, it was like everything changed. It was like, you have a second chance. Don't fuck it up. And so sobriety, 9 years sober, it's not easy, but I have an amazing fiance. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't smoke, nothing. And if I feel like, it's a battle every day. Like Marine Corps is always in my brain. I still dream about it. I still think about it. I still am very much it. And everything is a mission to me now. Like, how do I get through this? And sobriety is a mission every single day. Like I wake up sober. Damn it, I'm going to bed sober. And, there are days where I'm like, I feel like I want to have a drink, or I'll kid about it, or I'll say it. And I have to vocalize it because it sounds stupid. I'm mad. I want to have a drink. And I'm like, that's so dumb. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm like, I know. It's so stupid. I have to put it out there and be like, that is so irrational. So,
wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Dee. What an absolute roller coaster. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You mentioned as well in your emails that you don't think that the Marines are neglectful with their medical care, but they might not have caught it had you have still been within the armed forces at that point.
Right. I totally agree. Like I wanted to re-enlist. It didn't work out. And not for all that stuff. I wanted to change my MOS. They couldn't guarantee me that I could switch to whatever it was I wanted to be. So I was like, I'm just going to go home. So to me, like, that was like a sign, like, there's something else for you. Like, I believe that everything happens for a reason or whatever. But like, I really feel like if I would have re-enlisted, like they do have good medical, like I'm not bashing them, but at the same time, I don't know if they would have taken that same care that the VA did and making sure like, hey, that's not right. They could have just been like, all right, well, get back out there. And I really do feel like if I would have stayed in, then it would have taken my life.
Wow.
So, I don't know. That's, thankfully we aren't in that conversation. So, I just think that, that road was just not meant for me. And just, I don't regret anything. I've done some pretty heinous things, and it sucks that I did them. And I do feel bad. I feel remorse. But like, if I didn't do those things now and learn and have the help and have the things that I went through now, I wouldn't be who I am now. Like, I might be doing that shit right now and be in jail, or be in rehab or being unemployed. I might be homeless. Like, who knows? Like, the alcohol I let it hold on to me so hard, and I just let it. And
wow, this is like, I feel like against all the odds, we are having this conversation today. It feels like it maybe if it was your mental health, maybe if it was the alcohol, maybe if it was your diagnosis of cancer, like it just feels pretty incredible that we're actually sitting here today having this conversation after everything that you've been through.
And a lot of therapy, which I still do.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, mental health I wish that the stigma of mental health would just improve. Like, people have problems, like I remember I had an anxiety attack at work and I had to leave. This wasn't recent. It was a few years ago. And the response was, what are you worried about? What are you stressed about? And I'm like, that's not how anxiety works, man. Like, but I mean, I have a great therapist. I have a great man in my life. I have family. And so like, I'm really not alone. Like, but mental health, like, that's a serious, serious thing. Like, if someone is, like I said, the way I treat people, I try to be kind to people. Maybe that smile and nod is that one thing that just keeps them hanging. Like, like, hey, maybe things are going to turn around. Like, it sounds silly, but like, that's how I always felt. Like, why can't people like do for me like I've done for others? Like, I'm not asking now, but back then, like, why couldn't somebody have given me that olive branch that I could have grabbed onto? And but like, asking why is a terrible question, so I try not to ask it, because that's, for me, setting myself up for self-pity.
The way that you position yourself and the way that you are so sort of self-reflective is amazing for me to sit here and watch you go through that thought process, like in real time. I'm not sure if that's just the personal journey that you've been on, or the therapy that's allowed you to kind of incorporate that into your everyday thinking, but it kind of sounds as if therapy and a really positive support network, and obviously your own motivation and mission status in your mind to commit to your health and having that kind of proactive and reflective stance on everything has allowed you to find a position in life where you're comfortable, you're taking care of yourself, others are taking care of you, you're building a life that's positive and doesn't revolve around those things that had such a negative impact in your life, between 2000 and 2004, and actually before that as well, because of the difficulties that you had, with the anger, with your father's alcoholism, and looking for your identity growing up, which kind of being in the Marines might have got in the way of, that process of you trying to work out who you are and where do you feel you fit in, and trying to find those things that you identify with. And we're here today, and I just I just think that's amazing, Dee. What an incredible story you've told us. You've given us everything. You've given us like insight into, the difficulties that you had growing up, and then life in basic training, and then life in your post in the Marines, and some of the things that, some of the dramas that might unfold for people existing in that environment, and just your life afterwards. What a roller coaster. I'm absolutely in awe of how you're able to sit here today and have this conversation with me and just be so open about it. I know that you said that you laugh when you're nervous, and that's kind of a reaction that you've always had, but you just seem like, I don't know, I would just love to take you out for a coffee. I just think I could sit and listen to you talk all day.
I mean, if I ever make it out that way, I'll email you, and I'll be more than happy to grab a soda.
I would love that. Fantastic. So I think that brings us to the end of our episode today. I know that we've been waiting months to have this conversation, and I'm so glad we're finally able to have it. There was a really nice section in there where we focused on the way that women are viewed within the Marine Corps, or at least the way they were when you were enlisted. And we've spoken a lot about the LGBTQIA plus community as well. So I feel like we've had a nice extra layer added onto the information that Ryan gave us in the previous episode on the Marines, and now on your experiences as somebody, that identifies as female within the Marines during the early 2000s, on what it might have been like for somebody to be involved in that at that time. So if anybody else has another perspective that they'd like to add, then we'd be interested to hear about it. And I'm just so thankful for your time, Dee, and just so I don't know, not taking it for granted, I suppose, that we were able to actually sit down today and have this conversation. I think it's something that we should take a step back and actually really think about, because there's been some really crossroady moments in your story where it could have gone one way or the other. So I'm really glad that we were able to have this chat today.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was it was great. I hope that, maybe, it touches somebody and say, hey, I get that. Like, I understand, and I'm not alone. And, just knowing that, like, even listening to other episodes, like, of people that were, that are cult survivors, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like that. Not like maybe from an emotional standpoint, from things that they're growing up, or whatever, just a certain mental aspect or a certain emotional aspect. And I'm like, oh, like, I would love to just hang out and be like, listen, it's going to be better. It's going to be okay. Like, life is, I like to be more of an optimist. I am a realist. Like, life is crazy and all these things, but like, things don't have to be doom and gloom. Like, it's all about, just making the right choices, or doing whatever. And it's like, oh, it's going to be okay. Like, maybe even if it's not, like, you gotta, sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. Like, and I feel like just having a positive mental attitude really helped me through everything, especially the cancer. And I was like, I could sit here and cry and feel sorry for myself, but what the hell is that going to do? That's not going to do anything. Like, I need to fight this. Like, I'm a fighter, like, literally and physically, like, or mentally, like, this is a mission. I'm not failing my mission. Like, we're gonna do this, and I have. So, it's like, cool.
Absolutely. And I really do kind of agree with what my own words that I said at the start of the episode, where I feel like this conversation might reach people on other layers other than just talking about the high demand aspect of the armed forces. there's a lot in your episode that I feel people can relate to, and hopefully people will take away something from this episode. I hope it's been a cathartic experience for you as well to just chat about it all. And it's, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much, Dee. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Same to you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.
That is the end of this week's episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram @cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault Podcast.